Post-partition plan. 47 to 48, civil war and mandatory Palestine. This is the war for Israeli independence, I believe. Or maybe not, actually. Well, we'll just read from here, I guess. The General Assembly's vote caused joy in the Jewish community and anger in the Arab community. This was in favor of the 47 UN partition plan, the United Nations partition plan for Palestine. The General Assembly's vote caused joy in the Jewish community and anger in the Arab community. Violence broke out between the sides, escalating into civil war. From January 1948, operations became increasingly militarized with the intervention of a number of Arab Liberation Army regiments inside Palestine, each active in a variety of distinct sectors around the different coastal towns. They consolidated their presence in Galilee and Samaria. Abd al-Qadir al-Husseini came from Egypt with several hundred men, the Army of the Holy War. Having recruited a few thousand volunteers, he organized the blockade of the 100,000 Jewish residents of Jerusalem. The Yishuv tried to supply the city using convoys of up to 100 armored vehicles, but largely failed. We read about this, that their attempts to resupply the city and everything were constantly being destroyed until the Hashanah, the one part of that would later merge with the other two and become the Israeli Defense Force, stopped them from doing that. By March, almost all Haganah's armored vehicles had been destroyed. The blockade was in full operation, and hundreds of Haganah members who had tried to bring supplies into the city were killed. Haganah. Fuck these words, dude. Up to 100,000 Arabs from the urban upper and middle classes in Haifa, in Haifa, it's Haifa, right? I think somebody said, or is it Haifa? Haifa, Jaffa, and Jerusalem, or Jewish-dominated areas, evacuated abroad or to Arab centers eastwards. Let me just get these cities in my brain. Haifa. You put H-I, and I don't know what you mean when you put H-I. Typically when you put I, usually that sound in my brain, that's an E sound. I is an E sound, but are you just saying it's actually high like in English, like Haifa? As high as in hello? Okay, Haifa, okay. Okay, so Haifa is here, north of Tel Aviv. Jaffa. I know Jerusalem's down here. Where is Jaffa? Jaffa. Your pop filter isn't blocking your voice properly? It is enough. Get fucked, loser. And Jaffa. Oh my god, they have... I'm sorry. Jaffa is basically near Tel Aviv. Okay. Haifa, Jaffa, and Jerusalem. Or Jewish-dominated areas evacuated abroad or to Arab centers eastwards. This situation caused the U.S. to withdraw their support for the partition plan, thus encouraging the Arab League to believe that the Palestinian Arabs, reinforced by the Arab Liberation Army, could put an end to the plan for partition. I think that's worth putting up. This was in... I wonder what year this kind of happened in. The British, on the other hand, decided on the 7th of February 1948 to support the annexation of the Arab part of Palestine by Transjordan. The Jordanian army was commanded by the British. This was in February, March, April, May. Okay. Okay. Xander, $10. Real life lore is worth checking out for military and economic history in this region. Very difficult to find focused history. Listen, okay, I'm just going to say this one more time. I don't know why you guys are wasting your money, okay? I am not, I am not reading anything else. I'm literally just going through the wiki to get like a bare collection of facts. After that, I will flesh out more knowledge by watching documentaries, interviews, or reading other things if I need to, okay? But I don't care about somebody else's digested version of this. I would rather digest this myself, and then we'll watch other stuff, okay? Please stop recommending me other fucking things, okay? Jesus. David Ben-Gurion reorganized the Haganah and made conscription obligatory. Every Jewish man and woman in the country had to receive military training. Thanks to funds raised by Golda Meir from sympathizers in the United States and Stalin's decision to support the Zionist cause, the Jewish representatives of Palestine were able to purchase important arms in Eastern Europe. That's probably important to add too. Golda Meir? I wish there was a reference for this. I'm curious. Jesus Christ. Big Yeast. Real Life League is a good source if you need more direct info. Okay. Hello there. I have a few friends that are Jewish and they're worried about violence against them. We're in the US. Do you think there is any legit reason to be worried or overreaction? You're probably fine for now. Ben-Gurion gave Yigael Yadin the responsibility to plan for the announced intervention of the Arab states. Actually, what is this Golda Meir thing real quick? Was an Israeli politician who served as the fourth prime minister of Israel from 1969 to 1974, born in 1898. She was Israel's first and only female head of government, the first female head of government in the Middle East, and the fourth elected female head of government or state in the world. Born in Kiev in the Russian Empire to Jewish parents, Meir immigrated as a child of their family to the U.S. in 1906. She graduated from the Milwaukee State Normal School and found work as a teacher. While in Milwaukee, she embraced the labor Zionist movement. In 1921, Meir and her husband emigrated to mandatory Palestine, settling in Merhavia, later becoming the kibbutz's representative to the Histadrut. In 1934, she was elevated to the executive committee of the trade union. Meir held several key roles in the Jewish agency during and after World War II. She was a signatory of the Israeli Declaration. I'm curious, how did she raise money? Like, I'm curious what her connections were that allowed her to actually like raise money abroad. Described as the Iron Lady of Israeli politics, but also widely blamed for the country being caught by surprise during the war in 1973. Dismissive statements towards Palestinians. Jesus Christ. Mother ran a grocery store. She began studying in North Virginia High School. A sign painter and socialist. Her future husband, Morris Meyerson. Early political career. 1934, when Meir returned to the United States, she joined the executive committee of the Histadrut and moved up the ranks to become the head of its political department. This appointment was important training for her future role in Israeli leadership. July of 1938, Meir was the Jewish observer from Palestine at the Evian Conference, called by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in the United States to discuss the question of Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi persecution. Delegates from 32 invited countries repeatedly expressed their sorrow for the plight of European Jews, but refused to admit the refugees. The only exception was the Dominican Republic, which pledged to accept 100,000 refugees on generous terms. Meir was disappointed at the outcome, and she remarked to the press, "There is only one thing I hope to see before I die, and that is that my people should not need expressions of sympathy anymore." Throughout World War II, Meir served several key roles. In 1946, she became acting head of the political department of the Jewish Agency after the British arrested Moshe Sharet and other leaders of the Yishuv as part of Operation Agatha. This was a critical moment in her career. She became the principal negotiator between the Jews in Palestine and the British Mandatory Authorities, blah, blah, blah. First phase of the war. For most of the war, Mayer reluctantly played what she felt was a minor role in Israel's activities. An article published by the Golden Mayer Institute said she felt like she was being pushed aside to a secondary arena. However, she played a critical role in fundraising. Oh, this is what I was looking for. Okay, I was just curious. In January of 1948, the Jewish Agency needed to raise funds for the continuing war in the coming Israeli state. The treasurer of the Jewish Agency was convinced that they would not be able to raise more than $7 or $8 million from the American Jewish community. Mayer raised over $30 million. Key to her success was an emotional speech she first delivered in Chicago on the 22nd of January. In what, 48? Yes. She toured dozens of cities in the United States and returned to Israel on the 18th of March. The funds were critical to the success of the war effort and the establishment of Israel. By comparison, the opposing Arab Higher Committee's annual budget was around $2.25 million. Similar to Haganah's annual budget before the war, Ben-Gurion wrote to Mayer that Mayer's role as the Jewish woman who got the money, which made the state possible, would go down in history. However, upon returning home, she suffered a political setback. The Jewish Agency and National Council executives excluded her from the 13-member cabinet of the Provisional Government of Israel and only included her in the 37-member People's Council. Ben-Gurion protested this, saying, "It is inconceivable that there shall be no adequate woman. It is a moral and political necessity for the Yishuv, the Jewish world, and the Arab world." At one point, he even considered offering her his spot on the cabinet. On the 13th of April, she was hospitalized in Tel Aviv due to a suspected heart attack. Ben-Gurion and the political department heads urged her to guard her health and come to Jerusalem as soon as she could. They asked her to be the mother of the city and that her words to 100,000 residents will be a source of blessing and encouragement. However, she felt like it was a secondary and temporary role. Instead, on the 6th of May, she visited Haifa after its 22nd of April occupation by Haganah. Fuck me. This trip had a significant impact on her. There, she witnessed an elderly Arab woman emerging from a destroyed house, clutching to her few remaining belongings. When the two women made eye contact, they burst into tears. Mayer went on to call the mass expulsion and flight of Arabs before the 1948 Palestine War dreadful, and likened it to what befell the Jews in Nazi-occupied Europe. She returned to Tel Aviv and eventually to Jerusalem 2 weeks before the end of the mandate. The 10th of May, Mayer had a second meeting with Abdullah I. She traveled to Amman in secret, disguised as an Arab woman. He proposed that Palestine be absorbed into Jordan. This was the theory or the idea that one of the reasons why I guess Transjordan didn't help that much is because their goal was more conquest rather than the actual defeat of Israel, right? He proposed that Palestine be absorbed into Jordan with autonomy granted to majority Jewish areas. Golda rejected the proposal. It then seemed likely that Abdullah I would invade. Wow, Coldfish, thanks for tier 5 subbing again. Hi, from Israel. I've been watching recent Gas the Jews protests, and I've been slowly turning into a silly conservative, and I hate it. Life is kind of you now, to be honest. Nice. Okay. I wonder if there's a read here for Stalin's decision to support the Zionist cause. So Golda Meir raised $30 million. I wonder how much, like, the Soviet Union provided. With the German invasion of the USSR in 1941, Stalin reversed his long-standing opposition to Zionism and tried to mobilize worldwide Jewish support for the Soviet war effort. A Jewish anti-fascist committee was set up in Moscow. Many thousands of Jewish refugees fled the Nazis and entered the Soviet Union during the war, where they reinvigorated Jewish religious activities and opened new synagogues. In May of 1947, Soviet Deputy Foreign Minister Andrei Gromyko, told the UN that the USSR supported the partition of Palestine into a Jewish and an Arab state. The USSR formally voted that way in the UN in November of 1947. However, once Israel was established, Stalin reversed his positions, favored the Arabs, arrested the leaders of the Jewish Anti-Fascist Committee, and launched attacks on Jews in the USSR. Oh, rip. Hold on. Okay. This was in 48, and this is saying this happened in 47. What the Mel? In 1947, the United Nations Special Committee on Palestine recommended that Western Palestine should be partitioned into a Jewish state, an Arab state, and a UN-controlled territory, Corpus Separatum, around Jerusalem. This partition plan was adopted on November 29, 1947, with UNGA Resolution 181, 33 votes in favor, 13 against, and 10 abstentions. I believe that Great Britain also abstained from this vote. Because they didn't want to appear biased here, apparently, I believe. Violence throughout the country, previously an Arab and Jewish insurgency against the British, Jewish-Arab communal violence spiraled into the 1947 and 1949 Palestine War. This conflict led to the exodus of about 711,000 Palestinian Arabs outside of Israel's territories. More than a quarter had already fled prior to the Israeli Declaration of Independence and the start of the war. After the 1949 armistice agreements, a series of laws passed by the first Israeli government prevented displaced Palestinians from claiming private property or returning on the state's territories. They and many of their descendants remained refugees, supported by UNRWA. Dorji, $20. One good book I've been reading was Partitioning Palestine, which describes the partitioning process. Thanks, bro. Let me go ahead and read that like super quick, okay? Wait, actually. Okay, Jesus. Since the creation of the State of Israel, the World Zionist Organization has functioned mainly as an organization dedicated to assisting and encouraging Jews to migrate to Israel. It has provided political support for Israel and other countries, but plays little role in internal Israeli politics. The movement's major success since 1948 was in providing logistical support for Jewish migrant and refugees, and most importantly, in assisting Soviet Jews in their struggle with the authorities over the right to leave the USSR and to practice their religion in freedom. Okay, Torontos, listen. You're banned, okay? I told you to stop spamming. You spam the same fucking thing a million fucking times. Please, okay? You'll get unbanned tomorrow if my mods remember, okay? Jesus Christ. Or figure out how to time that guy out for like a day. Christ. And the exodus of 850,000 Jews from the Arab world, mostly to Israel. In 1944 to 1945, Ben-Gurion described the 1 million plan to foreign officials as being the primary goal and top priority of the Zionist movement. The immigration restrictions of the British White Paper of 1939 meant that such a plan could not be put into large-scale effect until the Israeli Declaration of Independence in May of 1948. The new country's immigration policy had some opposition within the new Israeli government, such as those who argued that there was no justification for organizing large-scale immigration among Jews whose lives were not in danger, particularly when the desire and motivation were not their own, as well as those who argued that the absorption process caused undue hardship. However, the force of Ben-Gurion's influence and insistence ensured that his immigration policy was carried out. Interesting. I'm still not sure what... Actually, I can just read this article directly. Was Czechoslovakia part of the Soviet Union? I have no fucking idea. Was Czechoslovakia, as it existed proper, was it ever part of the Soviet Union? Or was it a Warsaw Pact? Was it even a Warsaw Pact? I'm not even sure. It became one of the most tightly controlled communist regimes in the Warsaw Pact. Okay, gotcha. Arms shipments from Czechoslovakia to Israel from 1947 to 1949. Purchase weapons from Eastern Europe. That's important, probably. Between June of 1947 and October 31st of 1949, oh, here, have some music, okay. Between June of 1947 and October 31st of 1949, the Jewish Agency, later to become the Israeli government, seeking weapons for Operation Balak, made several purchases of weapons in Czechoslovakia, some of them of former German army weapons captured by the Czechoslovakian army on its national territory, or newly produced German weapons from Czechoslovakia's post-war production. Operation Balak was a smuggling operation during the founding of Israel in 1948 that purchased arms in Europe to avoid various embargoes and boycotts, transferring them to the Yishuv. And the Yishuv was the pre-Israeli, pre-State of Israel Jewish government. In this deal, sale activities of Czechoslovak arms factories were coordinated by a special purpose department of the, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this bullshit, Czechoslovak Metalworking and Engineering Works, holding called blah, 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 blah. The deliveries from Czechoslovakia proved important for the establishment of Israel. The arms contracts and deliveries. The first contract was signed on January 14th of 1948 by Jan Masaryk, the Czech foreign minister. Ideology played no role in these initial transactions. They were exclusively commercial. The contract included 200 MG-34 machine guns, 4,500 P-18 rifles, and 50,400,000 pounds of rounds of ammunition. MG-34 machine gun? Recoil-operated, air-cooled, general-purpose machine gun. Interesting, okay. And then the Karabiner 98 Kurtz. Oh, Car 98. Oh, shit. Where are DayZ boys at? Deliveries. The first two shipments of 200 rifles, 40 MG-34 machine guns, and bullets secretly landed during the night of the 31st of March to April 1st at a makeshift airfield at Beit Daras. In a chartered American Skymaster cargo plane. The second larger shipment, covered with onions and potatoes, of 4,500 rifles and 200 machine guns with bullets, arrived at Tel Aviv port aboard the Nora on the 2nd of April. A third shipment of 10,000 rifles, 1,450 machine guns, and bullets reached the Yishuv by sea on the 20th of April. At last, the Haganah command had at hand a stockpile of thousands of weapons that it could freely deploy. The two shipments proved decisive. Without doubt, of all the shipments that subsequently reached the Yishuv, none was to have greater immediate impact or historical significance. Total deliveries. They were given they bought aircraft as well. Jesus. 25 Avia S-199 fighters, propeller-driven Messerschmitt Bf-109G based fighter aircraft, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then 61 Supermarine Spitfires is a British single-seat fighter aircraft used by the Royal Air Force and other allied countries before. Those Avia planes were shittier Messerschmitts that were actually really bad. I could be wrong, but I'm guessing it's probably better than not having planes at all, okay? Just a guess, though. Some of the aircraft were lost en route to Israel. The delivery of an aircraft, I wonder if they lose them en route. Do you still have to pay for them? How do you think they sorted that out? The delivery of aircraft began in May 20th, 1948, and was conducted from the Czech airfield near the town of Zatek. Lake Toyavier, thanks for subbing. Some of Avia fighters were dismantled and flown to Israel in transport airplanes. Zatek is a town in Luni District. I don't know. I'm just curious how this is. Show me. Near Prague in Czech. Is it Czechia? Mel, how do they pronounce it today? Is it Czechia or Chechia or what?
What?
This country's name. Czechia? Chechia?
Czechoslovakia?
They don't call it Czechoslovakia anymore.
Huh?
It's not Czechoslovakia anymore. It broke up.
Oh, I don't know what they...
What the, Mel?
I don't know how to pronounce it, I'm sorry. That's a weird word.
Chechia. It might be Chechia. I don't know.
Chechia.
I think it's that one.
Chechia is like thank you in Chinese, isn't it?
Thank you in Chinese? In Chinese, isn't it like shishi?
Yeah, Chechia or something like that.
Okay. Some of the deliveries were not finished until after cessation of hostilities. Only 18 Spitfires reached Israel prior to the end of war by direct flight from Czechoslovakia during operations Velveta 1 in September and Velveta 2 in December of 1948. Both operations with a refueling stop in Yugoslavia. Be Melful.
I love you.
Love you too. During Operation Velveta 2, Spitfires were repainted in Yugoslav Air Force markings for their flight from Kunovici to Niksik. Bro, come on. One abbreviation or one thing, stop this. The rest were shipped in crates, officially declared as scrap iron, along with 12 Merlin 66 engines. The deliveries lasted until the end of April 1950. Other defense cooperation. Czechoslovakia also trained 81 pilots and 69 ground crew specialists, some of them later forming the first fighter unit of the Israeli Air Force, and on Czechoslovakian soil, a group of Jewish volunteers the size of approximately a brigade, about 1,300 men and women, were also trained. Cypher, thanks for subbing. From August 20th to November 4th, the Czechoslovak Armed Forces code name of the training was DI, an abbreviation for Duvernay. Is it, bro? What the fuck are these letters? Were they is the original 26 not enough? They got to put a different code over every fucking vowel. Jesus, literally meaning classified Israel. A moto mechanized brigade group of Jewish volunteers. This sounds like cyborg warriors. A moto mechanized brigade group of Jewish volunteers trained in Czechoslovakia didn't take part in the 1948 war. Gotcha. Okay. Ben-Gurion gave Yigael Yadin the responsibility to plan for the announced intervention of the Arab states. The result of his analysis was Plan Dalet, in which Haganah passed from the defensive to the offensive. The plan sought to establish Jewish territorial continuity by conquering mixed zones: Tiberias, Haifa, Safed, Beisan, Jaffa, and Acre probably fell, resulting in the flight of more than 250,000 Palestinian Arabs. The situation was one of the catalysts for the intervention of neighboring Arab states. On the 14th of May 1948, on the day the last British forces left from Haifa, the Jewish People's Council gathered the Tel Aviv Museum and proclaimed the establishment of a Jewish state in Eretz Israel to be known as the State of Israel. The Zionist military plan executed the Civil War phase of the 1940s. Okay, this is basically when Israel was like, we're going to go in and take all this shit over. Fuck these guys. Okay, so we did this one, the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. That's the 1948 Palestinian War, I think, right? Immediately following the declaration of the new state, both superpower leaders, President Truman and Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, recognized the new state. The Haganah became the Israeli Defense Force. The Polmak, Etzel, and Lehi were required to cease independent operations and join the IDF. The Arab League members, Egypt, Transjordan... Hold on, I'm sorry, 1 second. Destiny, 8 out of the 13 planned delay operations or Dalet operations were outside of the UN partition, so it's kind of sus to say they actually accepted the partition plan when actions don't respect it. Well, hold on. They did accept it, but the Arabs rejected it, so they probably didn't accept it after they rejected it. So, but I mean, like, yeah. I mean, that's not... Okay, yeah? Should extend your reading of Plan Delay. Plan Dalet. Can I hear, like... I just want to hear how it's pronounced.
Welcome back to the Untold History Channel. Today, we're delving into a pivotal chapter in history's Plan Dalet. This military strategy had a profound impact on the course of the 1948
Did you say Plan Dalet?
This military strategy delving into a pivotal chapter in history's Plan Dalet.
Okay, it is Dalet. Okay. Plan Dalet was a Zionist military plan executed in the Civil War phase of the 1948 Palestine War for the conquest of territory in Mandatory Palestine in preparation for the establishment of a Jewish state. The plan was requested by the Jewish agency leader David Ben-Gurion and developed by the Haganah finalized March 10th, 1948. The plan, requested by David Ben-Gurion, who became Israel's first prime minister, was a set of guidelines to take control of Mandatory Palestine, declare a Jewish state, and defend its borders and people, including the Jewish population outside of the borders, before and in anticipation of the invasion by regular Arab armies. According to the Israeli Yehoshaphat Harkabi, Plan Dalit called for the conquest of Arab towns and villages inside and along the borders of the area allocated to the proposed Jewish state in the UN partition plan. In case of resistance, the population of conquered villages was to be expelled outside the borders of the Jewish state. If no resistance was met, the residents could stay put under military rule. Note the Wikipedia note on the top left of this article. The neutrality of this article is disputed. Oh boy. Plan Dalit specifically spoke of gaining control of areas outside the borders of the Jewish state, wherever Yishuv populations existed. This issue is subject to much controversy, with historians asserting that it was defensive, while other historians assert that the plan aimed at the expulsion, sometimes called an ethnic cleansing, on the grounds that that was an integral part of a planned strategy. Let's see, unreliable source, neutral tone. It's been very difficult reading this and related articles due to the complete lack of neutral tone. Labeling sources or scholars Zionist or Israeli serve what purpose, other than explicitly saying you can ignore everything they say. Tomba's breach of 1RR. You should sell, I don't know what 1R even means. And your second revert, you noted we cannot base an entire article dedicated to a hotly debated subject based solely on the writings of one scholar, usually identified with a very specific point of view. That's not the case when tags. Jesus. Okay, people are fighting. Pronouncing Hebrew words is like speaking French with a German accent. I hope this helps. It doesn't at all, actually. That's saying you do a short guide on reading Hebrew names. Fuck off. Okay, I will butcher all these names. I don't give a fuck. The summer of 1937, according to the official history of the Haganah, the commander of their forces in the Tel Aviv area, Elimelech Slikowitz, fuck me, dude, received an order from Ben Gurion, who, anticipating an eventual British withdrawal from the country after the Peel Report, asked Silkowitz, is it Silkowitz or Silkowitz, to prepare a plan for the military conquest of the whole of Palestine. According to the historians Walid Khalidi and Ahmed H. Sadi, it was this Abner plan which provided a blueprint refined in subsequent adjustments, A, B, and C, before it emerged in its final plan as Plan Dalit over a year later. This Peel Report is brought up quite a bit. Let's read this real quick. The Peel Commission, formerly known as the Palestine Royal Commission, was a British Royal Commission of Inquiry headed by Lord Peel, appointed in 1936 to investigate the causes of unrest in Manitoba, Palestine, which was administered by Great Britain following a 6-month-long Arab general strike. Appointed in 1936, okay. July of 1937, the Commission published a report that for the first time stated that the League of Nations mandate had become unworkable and recommended partition. The British cabinet endorsed the partition plan in principle, but requested more information. Following the publication in 1938, the Woodhead Commission was appointed to examine it in detail and recommend an actual partition plan. Maybe we can throw this here, I guess. The Peel Commission, published on July 7th, 1937. First time declaration that mandatory Palestine was becoming unworkable and needed to be partitioned. Following the publication in 1938, the Woodhead Commission. Bro, how many fucking commissions and committees and all this shit do these motherfuckers make? It's like every year you guys are doing new shit. What the fuck? Following the publication in 1938, the Woodhead Commission was appointed to examine it in detail and recommend an actual partition plan. The Arabs opposed the partition plan and condemned it unanimously. The Arab Higher Committee opposed the idea of a Jewish state and called for an independent state of Palestine with protection of all legitimate Jewish and other minority rights and safeguarding of reasonable British interests. They also demanded cessation of all Jewish immigration and land purchased. They argued that the creation of a Jewish state and lack of independent Palestine was a betrayal of the word given by Britain. Dustin Miller, thanks for the $20. Love your content, bro. Keep up the good work. Thanks. The Zionist leadership was bitterly divided over the plan. In a resolution adopted at the 1937 Zionist Congress, the delegates rejected the specific partition plan, yet the principle of partition is generally thought to have been accepted or not rejected outright by any major faction. The delegates empowered the leadership to pursue future negotiations. The Jewish Agency Council later attached a request that a conference be convened to explore a peaceful settlement in terms of an undivided Palestine. According to Benny Morris, Ben-Gurion, and Weizmann, saw it as a stepping stone to some further expansion and the eventual takeover of the whole of Palestine. Let's see. With the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. Okay, so that's... yeah, okay. Okay, this was for Plan Dalet. 1945 onwards, the Haganah designed 4 general military plans, the implementation of the final version, which eventually led to the creation of Israel. Plan Aleph, drawn up in February of 1945 to complement the political aim of a unilateral declaration of independence. It was designed to suppress Palestinian Arab resistance to the Zionist takeover of parts of Palestine. Plan Bet, produced in September of 1945, emerged in May of 1947. And designed to replace Plan Aleph in the context of new developments such as Britain's submission, the problem of Palestine to the United Nations, and growing opposition from surrounding Arab states to the Zionist partition plan. Plan Gimel, also known as the May Plan, produced in May of 1946, emerged in November and December of 1947 in the wake of the UN partition plan. It was designed to enhance Zionist military and police mobilization and enable actions as needed. Aleph Destiny. Aleph. Oh, okay. Hold on. Is this guy like a schizo poster? Okay. And then Plan Dalet, Plan D of March 1948 is the most noteworthy, guided by a series of specific operational plans, the broad outlines of which were considered as early as 1944. Plan Dalet was drawn up to expand Jewish-held areas beyond those allocated to the proposed Jewish state in the UN partition plan. Its overall objective was to seize as much territory as possible. Dubious. Discuss. Oof. In advance of the termination of the British Mandate when Zionist leaders planned to declare their state. Why do the writers use the term pregnant pause? Does it even make sense? I don't even know what that means. On November 29th, 1947, the UN voted to approve the partition plan for Palestine for ending the British Mandate and recommending the establishment of an Arab state and a Jewish state. We know this one. In the immediate aftermath of the United Nations approval of the partition plan, the Jewish community expressed joy while the Arab community expressed discontent. On the day after the vote, a spate of Arab attacks left at least 8 Jews dead, 1 in Tel Aviv by sniper fire and 7 in ambushes on civilian buses that were claimed to be retaliations for a Lehi raid 10 days earlier. Shooting, stoning, and rioting continued. Dubious. Discuss. Apace in the following days. Fighting began almost as soon as the plan was approved, beginning with the Arab Jerusalem riots of 1947. Soon after, violence broke out and became more and more prevalent. Murders, reprisals, and counter-reprisals came fast on each other's heels, resulting in dozens of victims killed on both sides in the process. The sanguinary impasse persisted as no force intervened to put a stop to the escalating cycles of violence. From January onward, operations became increasingly militarized, with the intervention of a number of regiments of the Arab Liberation Army, consisting of volunteers from Arab countries inside Palestine, each active in a variety of distinct sectors around the different coastal towns. They consolidated their presence in Galilee and Samaria. Abd al-Qadir al-Husseini came from Egypt with several hundred men. We've already read this. Several hundred men of the Army of the Holy War, having recruited a few thousand volunteers. Al-Husseini organized the blockade of the 100,000 Jewish residents in Jerusalem. To counter this, the Yishuv authorities tried to supply the Jews of the city with food by using convoys of up to 100 armored vehicles. The average became more and more impractical as the number of casualties in the relief convoys surged. By March, al-Husseini's tactic, sometimes called the War of the Roads, had paid off. Almost all of Haganah's armored vehicles had been destroyed. The blockade was in full operation, and the Haganah had lost more than 100 troops. According to Benny Morris, the situation for those who dwelt in the Jewish settlements in the highly isolated Negev and North Galilee was equally critical. According to Ilan Pape, In early March, the Yeshu's security leadership did not seem to regard the overall situation as particularly troubling, but instead was busy finalizing a master plan. Destiny, when a claim is dubious on Wiki, how much weight do you give to the information? When I see that it says something is dubious, my guess is they're probably fighting over who exactly was contributing. So, like, the sanguinary impasse persisted as no force intervened to put a stop to the escalating cycles of violence. Like, if it's dubious, my guess is going to be people are probably fighting over which side was contributing more. That'd be my guess. We can, I guess, look up exactly what they're... Oh, fuck. Is there a way to see this exact discussion point? The article is POV and dubious problems. Or can I not look up this exact thing? Who gets the Temple Mount in a two-state solution? It is the holiest site in Judaism, third for Islam. I don't know, who has it right now? Is Temple Mount where Al-Aqsa is? Also, stop putting things in both chats. Just type in kick chat, Jesus. Click on the talk page. I am on the talk page. That is Al-Aqsa. Wasn't Al-Aqsa built on top of Temple Mount? Or am I wrong? Israel has Temple Mount? I thought Israel doesn't have Temple Mount or Al-Aqsa. I thought that exists on the other side of the wall. Am I wrong? Do you perform the natural obligations? What? It's the main congregational mosque or prayer hall in the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound of the Old City of Jerusalem. It's on the West Bank side. Yeah. What facts or information would you need to see to shift your opinion away from pro-Israel? Well, it seems, without getting like, So here's like the issue. It seems like all of this comes down to whether or not you think Israel had an original right to exist, or that Jewish people had an original right to settle the land. If you think they don't, then everything is justified because Arabs are just continually trying to fight the Jewish people off the land. But if you do think they had a right to be there, then it's just a story of Jewish people constantly trying to compromise with the Arabs and them saying, no, fuck you, no, fuck you, no, fuck you. So I feel like maybe my opinion will change as we continue traveling forward in history. But like, it feels like if you think Israel had an original right, or the Jewish people had an original right to be there, then everything the Arabs do just is aggressive over and over again. But if you think they didn't, then the Arabs are just fighting for their land, basically, right? But who knows? Maybe Boner Bucks can change our mind on this. We'll see. Destiny. What the question sounds like to me was, what propaganda can I show you to sway you from the right conclusion? Well, no, your mind should always be open to being changed. And if you don't know what could even change your mind, that's probably not healthy for you. When you do research. But I think the obvious question is, why didn't the Brits or any other Western powers offer land? Why did they not take in refugees? The Arabs are being scapegoated? Well, why would they offer their own land, right? I mean, if they already have other land to offer. Also, I don't think the Zionist people that had been working for the decades leading up to the British Mandate, I don't think they wanted Jewish people to resettle in random places in Europe. I think they specifically wanted to go back to the Middle East, right? I think, did Herzl specifically call out? Let's see, actually. Herzl convened the first Zionist Congress in Basel, Switzerland, and was elected president of the Zionist organization. He began a series of planned nationwide support for a Jewish state, appealing unsuccessfully to German Emperor Wilhelm II and the Ottoman Sultan Abdul Hamid II at the Sixth Zionist Conference in 1903. Herzl presented the Uganda scheme, endorsed by Colonial Secretary Joseph Chamberlain on behalf of the British government. The proposal, which sought to create a temporary refugee for the Jews in British East Africa, followed by the Kishinev pogrom, was met with strong opposition and ultimately rejected. Herzl died of a heart attack like a loser in 1904 at the age of 44. Yikes. I wonder if I could find like the Zionist congresses. Like which one? How did they finally settle upon Palestine? And Palestine. I mean, it'd be interesting to actually see like the discussion of that, but okay. Plan. Ben-Gurion reorganized Haganah and made conscription obligatory. Every Jewish man and woman in the country had to receive military training. Was Israel or pre-Israel, the Yeshuv, were these like the first people to conscript women into the military as well? Or did this happen in other countries too? I'm curious. No, weren't there Russian women soldiers or Soviet women soldiers? But I don't know if they were conscripted or not, if they were forced to, or if they like joined voluntarily. The Celts. Lots of people did in World War II. Myron said women deserve less. Military equipment was procured from stockpiles in the Second World War. Blah, 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 blah. There's some disagreement among historians about the precise authors of Plan Dalet. According to some, it was the result of the analysis of Yigael Yadin, at the time the temporary head of the Haganah. We've read this guy's name a few times. Temporary head of the Haganah. After Ben-Gurion invested him with the responsibility to come up with a plan in preparation for the announced intervention of the Arab states. According to Ilan Pape, the plan was conceived by the consultancy. This is a scholar, right? It must be. Is an expatriate Israeli historian and political scientist. Okay, because we read his writings come up a lot as well. Him and the Ben Garrison, or Ben... Not Ben Garrison. Benny Morris, Jesus Christ. I was thinking of the comic guy. He's also an Israeli historian. Arab affairs under the guise of Ben-Gurion. It was finalized and sent to Haganah units early in March 1948. The plan consisted of a general part and operational orders for the brigades, which specified which villages should be targeted and other specific missions. The general section of the plan was also sent to the Yeshuv's political leaders. Purpose. In this plan, the Haganah also started the transformation from an underground organization into a regular army. The reorganization included the formation of brigades and front commands. The stated goals included, in addition to the reorganization, gaining control of the areas of the planned Jewish state, as well as areas of Jewish settlements outside its borders. The control would be attained by fortifying strongholds in the surrounding areas and roads, conquering Arab villages close to Jewish settlements, and occupying British bases and police stations from which the Brits were withdrawing. Destiny will ignore this fact. What? Not to be conspiracy-brained, but why is almost everyone involved with Israel Jewish? You guys are, why do you waste my time with this? Why does Ben-Gurion sound like the name of like a Goron leader in like The Legend of Zelda? Control be attained by fortifying strong. Okay. The introduction of the plan states, the objective of this plan is to gain control of the areas of the Hebrew state and defend its borders. It also aims at gaining control of the areas of Jewish settlements and concentrations which are located outside the borders of the Hebrew state against regular, semi-regular, and small forces operating from bases outside or inside the states. The plan is based on three previous plans. Plan B, September 1945, the pill that I gave your mom. The May 1946 plan. This is Plan Gimel. And the Yehoshua plan, 1948. An earlier version of Plan Dalet named after Yehoshua Globerman, a Haganah commander killed in December of 1947. Since these plans were designed to deal with the situation inside the country, the first two plans deal with the first phase of incidents, while the third plan deals with the possibility of invasion by regular armies from the neighboring countries. The aim of Plan D is to fill the gaps in the previous three plans and to make them more suitable for the situation expected to obtain at the end of British rule in the country. Okay, I don't want to sound like a simp. Are there like movies that are like made about this shit? Because it really feels like a... I feel like if I was a Jew in like the 50s or 60s, after all this shit, I feel like I would feel like I am God's chosen people. Like, what the fuck? Jesus. I don't know, dude. Later on, the plan states... later on, the plan states, generally, the aim of this plan... The aim of this plan is not an operation of occupation outside the borders of the Hebrew state. However, concerning enemy bases lying directly close to the borders, which may be used as springboards for infiltration into the territory of the state, these must be temporarily occupied and searched for hostiles according to the above guidelines, and they must then be incorporated into our defensive system until operations cease. According to David Tall, the strategy called for the fortification and stabilization of a continuous Jewish-controlled line within the areas of the designated Arab state and along its putative borders, and for the harassment of and interference with the Arab forces as they moved in. The success of this strategy depended on three elements: cleansing the area, that's a word, the area along the Jewish state's borders of an Arab presence, fortifying the Jewish settlements along the line of advance of the Arab column, and the hit-and-run raids against the Arab troops as they advanced. The plan, section 3 under the Consolidation of Defense Systems and Fortification, calls for the occupation of police stations. The control... Do I need to read the rest of this entire plan? This is just the... The first operation, named Nachshon, consisted of lifting the blockade on Jerusalem. 1,500 men from Haganah's Givati Brigade and Palmach's Harel Brigade conducted sorties to free up the route. I think we've kind of read about this. British withdrew their troops already. The situation moved. The leaders of the neighboring Arab states intervened, but their preparations were not finalized, and they could not assemble sufficient forces to turn the tide of the war. Many Palestinian hopes lay with the Arab Legion. Oh, here's a question. When the mandate for Palestine ended, was there like an end date at the beginning of this that was agreed upon? How did everybody know like exactly when the mandate was going to end? It was 10 years from proclamation? Okay, but that's longer than the mandate lasted, so. Britain announced it. The 10 years is from the second white paper. Oh, okay. Carve out a corridor connecting Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, divide the main part of the UN proposed Arab state in two. Destroy ring of Arab villages surrounding Jerusalem. Destroy Arab villages surrounding Jaffa. Remove Arabs and consolidate control of all of eastern Galilee. Destroy Arab... Jesus. They were like, nope. Time to leave. The 8 of the 13 operations marked with an asterisk were executed outside territories allocated for a Jewish state according to the demarcations of the United Nations Partition Plan for Palestine before the entry of Arab regular armies into areas allotted for an Arab state. When the plan's execution lasted about 8 weeks, beginning in April 2nd. In those weeks, the Yeshuv's positions changed dramatically. Many Arab leaders left the country and local leadership collapsed. On the Jewish side, the number of those killed during the execution plan was 1,253, of which 500 were civilians. On the Arab side, Jewish counterattacks and offenses precipitated a mass exodus of 250,000 to 300,000 people. According to Benny Morris, the massive demographic upheaval propelled the Arab states closer to an invasion, about which they were largely unenthusiastic. I wonder how many Arabs died during all of these operations. I wonder what the numbers are. $13,000 Arabs died. Can you like link? Can you source that? The intent of Plan Dalet is subject to much controversy, with historians on the one extreme asserting that it was defensive and historians on the other extreme asserting that the plan aimed at maximum conquest and expulsion. Overall Palestinian casualties were 13,000, Egyptians 1,400, Iraq and Jordanian several hundred. Hold on, you're talking about the end of the whole, the end of the whole 1948 war. I'm just curious for this like Plan Dalet part. I'm curious, like, how many people died during these expulsions. According to French historian Henry Lawrence, the importance of the military dimension of Plan Dalet becomes clear by comparing the operations of the Jordanian and the Egyptian armies. The ethnical homogeneity of the coastal area obtained by the expulsions of the Palestinians eased the halt of the Egyptian advance, while Jewish Jerusalem, located in an Arab population area, was encircled by Jordanian forces. According to the Oxford Handbook of Genocide Studies, Jesus, whilst there may be controversy whether Plan Dalet was a centralized plan of ethnic cleansing, it could as well be a case of Haganah forces discovering that they could carry out ethnic cleansing at the local and regional level as their offensive drove out large numbers of Arabs. Historians asserting that the plan aimed at maximum conquest and expulsion. Walid Khalidi, General Secretary of the Institute for Palestine Studies, offered this interpretation in an address to the American Committee on Jerusalem. As is witnessed in the Haganah's Plan Dalet, the Jewish leadership was determined to link the envisaged Jewish state with the Jerusalem Corpus Separatum. But the Corpus Separatum lay deep in Arab territory, in the middle of the envisaged Palestinian state, so this linking up could only be done militarily. Corpus Separatum, is this in reference to Jerusalem? I believe it is. Was the internationalization proposal for Jerusalem and the surrounding areas part of the United Nations? Yes. Okay. Khalidi calls Plan Dalet a master plan for the conquest of Palestine. He points to the Zionist ideas of transfer and of a Jewish state in all of Palestine, and to the offensive character of the military operations of the Zionists as the main proof of his interpretation. In his book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, Israeli historian Ilan Pappé asserts that Plan Dalet was a blueprint for ethnic cleansing. This blueprint spelled it out clearly and unambiguously that Palestinians had to go. The aim of the plan was, in fact, the destruction of both rural and urban areas of Palestine. So here's like a question. I'm curious for the very pro-Palestinian view of this. If it was a plan for actual ethnic cleansing, why not kill so many more people, right? I think by the end of this war, we've read 711,000 Palestinian Arabs were expelled from their lands. But like the death count, which is horrible, but the death count total was like 15,000. Why wouldn't they have just killed way, way, way more people if the goal was actual ethnic cleansing? Ethnic cleansing doesn't mean killing people. Sure, but I mean, like, we're coming off of a few decades from the Armenian genocide, and they killed over 1 million people for that. Why wouldn't, if Jews were just trying to kill all the Arabs, why wouldn't they just kill them all? Why would they just like, why are they just trying to like shoo them out? If you do a big genocide, people/nations tend to step in. Do they? What was the foreign intervention like when the Turks genocided the Armenian people? World War I, Armenia's occupied is somewhat protected but subordinate. Like I'm trying. Did anybody internationally intervene when the Armenians were being genocided? Because the Holocaust just happened, and they probably wanted to come off as. Oh, sure, I guess maybe right after the World War II, it would have been a bad look. World War I was a different world, really. Sure, okay, yeah. I've heard people say ethnic cleansing can also mean displacing. Academically, that's probably true. When people say it in real life, they usually just mean genocide. They might retreat back to that, but sure, I think ethnic cleansing can actually just mean like displacement of a peoples from an area. Not trying to be a conspiracy, Andy, but why didn't Israel predict the attack and why was the response so slow? Somebody asked me that question, and wait, they did. That's literally why they did this Plan Dalet stuff, is because they were predicting that the Arab nations would attack. Or are you talking about the modern day stuff? I don't know anything about how that was missed. I don't know if anybody knows how that was missed. I know there's a few conspiracies floating around, but there's no evidence for any of them, so. Okay. He's talking about the October 7th? Yeah, I know, yeah. Papay distinguishes between the general section of Plan Delta and the operational orders given to the troops. According to Papay, the general section of the plan, which was distributed to politicians, was misguiding as to the real intention of the Haganah. The real plan was handed down to the brigade commanders, not as vague guidelines, but as clear-cut operational orders for action. Along with the general section, each brigade commander received a list of the villages or neighborhoods that had to be occupied, destroyed, and their inhabitants expelled. Historians asserting that the plan was defensive. So this is probably the back and forth debate. The plan did not provide the conditions for the destruction of Palestinian villages and the deportation of the dwellers. This was not the reason for the plan's composition, and that its aim was to ensure full control over the territories assigned to... Okay, we should probably, like... Plan... Delay... Forced expulsion and control of areas that extended beyond the proposed partition borders. Some Zionists claim that this was a defensive action to secure the future safety and borders of the new country, Israel. Others claim this was purely an offensive territorial conquest aimed to ethnically cleanse the surrounding lands of Arabs to make it fertile for future Jews to settle, I guess. It's a controversy. Okay. The Arab-Israeli War. Immediately following the declaration of the new state, both superpower leaders, U.S. President Harry Truman and Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, recognized the new state. The Haganah became the Israeli Defense Force. That ethnic cleansing argument comes up quite a bit too in modern talks. Yeah, I think I've heard Loner Box. I've heard this given before. Like, they went and they ethnically cleansed so many people. Yeah, I've heard this before. Mike, Destiny also skipped over the entire important part. What do you think I skipped over? Wait, what? Destiny skipped over the entire important part. Wait, what do you think I skipped over? Oh, because you want me to go back 1880 to kill yourself, dude. Fuck off. Okay, we're chill for now. Hitler was inspired by the Armenian genocide, reason being nobody cared about it, and he thought it would be the same for the Jews. Hitler, Armenian genocide. Is that true? That'd be pretty funny. Who, after all, speaks today of the annihilation of the Armenians? Okay, based. Well. Helping to inspire Adolf Hitler 3 decades later to carry out the atrocities of World War II, Hitler's quote is still relevant today because the forces of denial and revisionism are still striving to... 1939, in preparation for the impending invasion of Poland, Hitler stated to Reich Marshal Hermann Göring and the commanding generals of Obersalzberg, "Our strength consists in our speed and our brutality. Genghis Khan led millions of women and children to slaughter with premeditation and a happy heart. History sees in him solely the founder of a state. It's a matter of indifference to me what a weak Western European civilization will say about me. I've issued the command, and I'll have anybody who utters but one word of criticism executed by a firing squad, that our war aim does not consist in reaching certain lines, but in the physical destruction of the enemy. Accordingly, I have placed my death head formations in readiness, for the present only in the east, with orders to them to send to death mercilessly and without compassion men, women, and children of Polish derivation and language. Only thus shall we gain the living space, Lebensraum, which we need. Who, after all, speaks today of the annihilation of the Armenians?" Gotcha. Okay. My friends in IDF turned their phones off last night. That means they are going in on the ground now. I hear tanks already moved in. Praying for my boys. Okay, dude. The Arab League members, Egypt, Transjordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, refused to accept the UN partition plan and proclaimed the right of self-determination for the Arabs across the whole of Palestine. The Arab states marched their forces into what had, until the previous day, been the British Mandate for Palestine, starting the First Arab-Israeli War. After an initial loss of territory by the Jewish state, the tide turned in the Israelis' favor, and they pushed the Arab armies back beyond the borders of the proposed Arab state. By November, tenuous ceasefires were arranged between the Israelis, Syrians, and Lebanese. On the 1st of December, King Abdullah announced the union of Transjordan with Arab Palestine west of the Jordan. Only Britain recognized the annexation. Armistice agreements. Israel signed armistice with Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, and Syria, establishing the demilitarized Green Line. These borders were not recognized by the Arab states as international boundaries. Following the ceasefire declaration, Britain released over 2,000 Jewish detainees it was still holding in Cyprus and recognized the State of Israel. On the 11th of May, 1949, Israel was admitted as a member of the United Nations. Oh, that's cute. It's probably good to have. May 11th, 1949. Israel admitted as a member of the United Nations. Good for you guys, Klappa. Shit. Whoops. Out of an Israeli population of 650,000, some 6,000 men and women were killed in the fighting, including 4,000 soldiers in the IDF, approximately 1% of the population, according to the UN. 726,000 Palestinians had fled or were expelled by the Israelis between 1947 and 1949. You type states and not nations. Oh, fuck. Sorry. Soros. I love it when Destiny questions words he's definitely read or heard. Such a good inside joke. Okay. '48 to '55, Ben Gurion and Sherrett. 120-seat parliament, the Knesset, met first in Tel Aviv, then moved to Jerusalem after the 1949 ceasefire. January of 1949, Israel held its first elections. The Socialist Zionist parties, Mapai and Mapam, won the most seats, 46 to 19 respectively. Mapai's leader, David Ben-Gurion, was appointed prime minister. He formed a coalition which did not include a Mapam, who were Stalinist and loyal to the USSR. Another Stalinist party, non-Zionist Maki, won 4 seats. This was a significant decision, as it signaled that Israel would not be in the Soviet bloc. The Knesset elected Cham Weizmann. This guy was one of the huge people that was like running around Europe trying to get everybody to support Israel, right? The whole Zionist stuff. He served as the first president of the Zionist organization and later as the first president of Israel. Wait, first president of Israel? Is first president different than the first prime minister? Do you guys have 2 different places for that? President of Israel is the head of state. The position is largely a ceremonial role. Oh, okay, so it's not, it's whatever. Okay, interesting. Wait, is it really? It doesn't do anything? How do you have a president that's a ceremonial role? Why not just call him like a king or some shit? Parliamentary systems have a prime minister and a chancellor. In Israel's case, a president is not necessarily ceremonial. Well, it says ceremonial, so... President of Israel is elected by an absolute majority in the Knesset by secret ballot. If no candidate receives an absolute majority of votes in the first segment of voting, the candidates with the fewest votes is eliminated in each subsequent round. Cute. President was elected a 5-year term. Anyone can run. The office falls vacant upon completion of a term, death, resignation, or decision of 3/4 of the Knesset to remove the president. What do they actually do? Powers of the president in Israel are generally equivalent to those held by heads of state in other parliamentary democracies and are largely dictated by basic law of the presidency, which was passed in 1964. Cringe, just show me. Also, sections of the powers of the president. The president signs every law except those that pertain to the president's powers and international or bilateral treaties approved by the Knesset. In addition, the president endorses the credentials of ambassadors and receives the credentials of foreign diplomats, appoints the governor of the Bank of Israel and state comptroller What the fuck is a comptroller? Inspects reviews and audits of the policy. Are these even real words? Upon recommendation of the Knesset House Committee, members of the Council on Higher Education, the National Academy of Science, the Broadcasting Authority, the authority to rehabilitate prisoners. Okay. He's got the power to pardon or commute the sentences of both soldiers and civilians. And ceremonially appoints judges to courts. Cringe. Okay. Comptrollers literally exist in the US. I'm sure they do. I wasn't. Okay. Okay. Wiseman. Okay, we're good. Is it Wiseman or Wiesman or Wiseman? This guy, and then it was this guy and one other dude. Like literally like ran over all of fucking Europe trying to beg everybody to support. Oh, was Balfour the other guy? Was the name of the guy for the declaration? Like trying to beg everybody to support his fucking country. It's wise guy, one guy. Wow, Edmund, thanks for the additional $20, my dude. It might be Weisman, I'm not sure. Three years. Oh, where are we at? Okay. The Knesset elected Chaim Weizmann. I still don't know how to pronounce this fucking guy's fucking name. Well, actually, we need to look it up. Why not watch videos instead of reading? I like reading lots of facts because videos are usually other people reading it and then giving you their version of what they think is important. I would rather just like kind of read the driest version of it than get other people's takes on things because I can make my own take on things. And people will selectively add or edit things that they feel are more important, and the things that are selectively added or taken away can dramatically influence how you view certain events that have happened historically, especially in regards to this, where there's a ton of fighting back and forth. Yeah. I think Unpacked is Israeli state media. Not sure if that's true or false. Oh, okay. They do that through text too, sure, but reading a Wikipedia article is going to be significantly less biased than reading like an op-ed or a blog post or something like that in general. I got a friend who recommended the Washington Institute as well for stuff on this. Are they like specializing in like Israeli-Palestinian conflict or? IDF says ground operations are expanding tonight, possibly happening soon. Maybe, I don't know. Don't know, don't care. Chaim Weitzman. Wait, Chaim Weitzman, that's his name. You can announce over the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet. I know you can, but I don't know how to pronounce shit from there either, okay? So fuck you. Wow, wow, wow. Good job. You're permabanned from KickChat. You did it. Dumb fuck. All governments have been coalitions. No party has ever won a majority in the Knesset. From 1948 until 1977, all governments were led by Mapai and the Alignment, predecessors of the Labor Party. In those years, labor Zionists, initially by David Ben-Gurion, dominated Israeli politics, and the economy was run on primarily socialist lines. Uh-oh, don't tell the lefties. Within 3 years, 1948 to 1951, immigration doubled the Jewish population of Israel and left an indelible imprint on Israeli society. Overall, okay, I probably need to read, I will probably today read more on this. How did Israel, as a newly formed country, how were they able to accept so many fucking people? Like, where did the food, the money, like, how do you double your population that significantly in a country that's just created with relatively limited help or no help from the outside and sustain it all? That just seems wild to me. Within 3 years, 1948 to 1951, immigration doubled the Jewish population of Israel and left an indelible imprint on Israeli society. Overall, 700,000 Jews settled in Israel during this period. Some 300,000 arrived from Asian and North African nations as part of the Jewish exodus from Arab and Muslim countries. Is that considered the second or third? Wait, stop overusing the frog. Hold on. At Destiny, do you think history will actually play a part in any end solution? It seems like it's more pragmatic to go for appeal to general peace and nonviolence and a solution based on historical context. Okay, I don't care about this. Maybe. Actually, I do. I don't think the history even matters that much for the modern shit, but who knows? It's just good to know it. So that I can fight against it when people say dumb things historically. Okay, overall 700,000 Jews settled, some 300,000 arrived from Asian and North African nations as part of the Jewish exodus from Arab and Muslim countries. Among them, the largest group, over 100,000, was from Iraq. The rest of the immigrants were from Europe, including more than 270,000 who came from Eastern Europe. Mainly Romania and Poland, over 100,000 each. Nearly all of the Jewish immigrants can be described as refugees. However, only 136,000 who immigrated to Israel from Central Europe had international certification because they belonged to the 250,000 Jews registered by the Allies as displaced after World War II and living in displaced persons camps in Germany, Austria, and Italy. In 1950, the Knesset passed the Law of Return, which granted to all Jews and those of Jewish ancestry, Jewish grandparent, and their spouses the right to settle in Israel and gain citizenship. That year, 50,000 Yemenite Jews, 99%, were secretly flown to Israel in Operation Magic Carpet. What is that? How do you secretly fly people? Do they just like hop into planes in the ocean, or what does that even mean? I'm sorry, I have to read this. It's an operation between June 1949 and September 1950 that brought 49,000 Yemenite Jews to the new state of Israel. During its course, the overwhelming majority of Yemenite Jews, some 47,000 from Yemen, 1,500 from Aden, so it's 500 from Djibouti and Eritrea. Jesus. Oh my God, fuck this. Various groups of Yemenite Jews had been immigrating to Palestine since 1881. In 1924, the ruler of northern Yemen, Imam Yahya, officially forbade Jewish immigration to mandatory Palestine. But Yemenite Jews were able to immigrate to Palestine by traveling to the British colony of Aden and then to Palestine. By the start of World War II, there were some 28,000 Jews of Yemenite descent in Palestine. A group of roughly 5,000 took in Aden since 1945 and was only allowed into Israel in 1948. Wow, I get them thanks for Tier 4 suburb. And Zahu for the Tier 2 suburb. Ethan just called for you to be sued. Good. Aden Colony is down here. Interesting. What is this, like the southeast tip or area of Yemen? Muslim rioters attacked the Jewish community in Aden and killed at least 82 Jews and destroyed a number of Jewish homes. That was after the 47 partition plan. So this was before Israel declared itself its own country. Yikes. And this was in British-ran territory. Jeez. Early in 1948, accusations of the murder of two Muslim Yemeni girls led to the looting of Jewish property. Did you see the leaked video of Netanyahu bragging about his plan? I've probably... anytime I get like leaked video of a guy talking for a minute or two, I don't usually care much about it, but I mean, I'm sure there's like bad stuff he said, yeah. Abba's from Aden, really? Esther Mayer Glitzenstein showed evidence how the community's sentiment for Aliyah played a part in the exodus, the extent to which surprised even the Jewish state and the agency in charge of the operations. Hold on, I gotta send something real quick. 1 second. 51 Iraqi Jews are granted temporary permission to leave the country, and 120,000 opted to move to Israel as part of the Operation Ezra and Nehemiah. Jews also fled from Lebanon, Syria, and Egypt. By the late 60s, about 500,000 Jews had left Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia. Is it Tunisia or Tunisia? I've heard both. Tunisia. Over the course of 20 years, some 850,000 Jews from Arab countries relocated to Israel. The land and property left behind by the Jews, much of it in Arab city centers, is still a matter of some dispute. Today, there are about 9,000 Jews living in Arab states, of whom 75% live in Morocco and 50% in Tunisia. Tunisia, vast assets, approximately $150 billion worth of goods and property before inflation, were left behind in these countries. Jesus. Jeremiah Hayduck, 1989. This music makes my pants tight. Love you, DJ. Nice. Destiny, the Hoscord callout was amazing. What Hoscord callout? Oh, my YouTube video? Between 1940 and 1958, the population of Israel rose from 800,000 to 2 million. During this period, food, clothes, and furniture had to be rationed in what became known as the austerity period. Immigrants were mostly refugees with no money or possessions, and many were housed in temporary camps known as Marbarat. By 52, over 200,000 immigrants were living in tents or prefabricated shacks built by the government. Israel received financial aid. Was this like big exodus? This like Jewish thing? Was this called an aliyah or not? Or do they call us like the third aliyah, or do they stop using that word because it was like lame? Jesus. Every immigration to Israel is called an aliyah? No, Ben Gurion gave a speech about there being only one aliyah upon the formation of Israel. Okay. There are not two waves of immigration to this country. There's only one of Jews, and there's only one settlement project of Jews on the land. Do you like dinosaurs? Only when they fuck you in the ass. Between 1948 and 1958, the population of Israel rose from 800,000 to 2 million. Oh, they just call it aliyah now all the time. Gotcha. By 1952, over 200,000 immigrants were living in tents or prefabricated shacks built by the government. Oh, cute, like in LA. Israel received financial aid from private donations from outside the country, mainly the US. The pressure on the new state's finances led Ben Gurion to sign a controversial reparations agreement with West Germany. Wait, what does this mean? According to the agreement, West Germany was to pay Israel for the cost of resettling so great a number of uprooted and destitute Jewish refugees after the war, and to compensate individual Jews via the Conference on Jewish Material Claims against Germany for losses in Jewish livelihood and property resulting from Nazi persecution. Wait, why was it controversial? During the Knesset debate, some 5,000 demonstrators gathered and riot police had to cordon the building. Israel received several billion marks and in return agreed to open diplomatic relations with Germany. Oh, because Israel probably didn't want to have any fucking thing to do with Germany. That's fair, probably. Argued that the reparation demand was based on recovering as much Jewish property as possible so that the murderers did not become the heirs as well. His other argument was that the reparations were needed to finance the absorption and rehabilitation of the Holocaust survivors of Israel. According to the website of the Conference on Jewish Material Claims against Germany, claims against responsible. Unspeakable crimes becoming a solution. President. Clear during this limited in material claims. What is the what was the controversy about it? Already extremely delicate on account of the Holocaust, further complicated by Cold War politics from Germany. The most willing and able to deal with Israel claims of the Holocaust. The strategic against the United States, which following the breakdown of the war with the Soviet Union, had come to believe the establishment of a prosperous West German economy was essential to forge reliance. I'm taking what remained of European Jewry. Does that just mean Jewish people? Opposition. Public debate was among the fiercest in Israeli history. Opposition to the agreement came from both the right, the Hurt and the General Zionists, and the left. The political spectrum, both sides argued that accepting reparation payments was the equivalent of forgiving the Nazis for their crimes. 1951. Susumaru God, $9.99. What's the app using for note taking? It seems pretty useful. Bro, you should probably just use OneNote or something. I don't know. I'm using an app called Obsidian, but there's a lot of things you can do with this, but I'm not just... Okay, yeah. It's called Obsidian. Okay, there you go. Said in the Knesset, Nazism is rearing its ugly head again in Germany, and our so-called Western friends are nurturing that Nazism. They are resurrecting Nazi Germany. Our army, the Israeli Defense Force, will be in the same camp as the Nazi army, and the Nazis will begin infiltrating here, not as our most terrible enemies, but rather as our allies. I'm not assuming that there are people who believe that Germany will pay a total of 3 billion marks over a period of 12 years, and that is no promise. The Israeli government will claim nothing but a piece of paper referring to 3 billion marks, and all this is intended is to mislead the public and claim the government has obtained... Okay, all right, I understand why. In 1949, education was made free and compulsory for all citizens under the age of 14. The state now funded the party-affiliated Zionist education system and a new body created by the Haredi Agudat Israel Party. A separate body was created to provide education for the remaining Palestinian Arab population. The major political parties now competed for immigrants to join their education systems. The government banned the existing educational bodies from the transit camps and tried to mandate a unitary secular socialist education under the control of camp managers, who also had to provide work, food, and housing for the immigrants. There were attempts to force Orthodox Yemenite children to adopt a secular lifestyle by teachers, including many instances of Yemenite children having their side curls cut by teachers. Oh no, not the side curls. Not the side curls. The Yemenite children affair led to the first Israeli public inquiry, collapse of the coalition, and there were attempts to force Orthodox Yemenite children to adopt a secular lifestyle by teachers, including many instances of Yemenite children having their side curls cut by teachers. Okay. You laugh, but this pushed the Middle Eastern Jews away from the left, and Israel is still feeling those consequences. In 1961, the CIA secretly relocated... Oh, it's a hamster fucking retard. Okay, don't care. Hamster force Orthodox... On May of 1950, in contravention of international law, Egypt announced that the Suez Canal was closed to Israeli ships and commerce. In 1952, a military coup in Egypt brought Abdel Nasser to power. The United States pursued close relations with the new Arab states, particularly the Nasser-led Egyptian Free Officers Movement and Ibn Saud of Saudi Arabia. Israel's solution to diplomatic isolation was to establish good relations with the newly independent states in Africa and with France, which was engaged in the Algerian War. In the January 1955 elections, Mapai won 40 seats and the Labour Party 10. Mosh Sharet, thanks Kate Lizzie for the $2, became Prime Minister of Israel at the head of a left-wing coalition. Between 53 and 56, there were intermittent clashes along all of Israel's borders as Arab terrorism and breaches of the ceasefire resulting in Israeli counter raids. Palestinian Fedayeen attacks, often organized and sponsored by the Egyptians, were made from Egyptian-occupied Gaza. Fedayeen attacks led to a growing cycle of violence as Israel launched reprisal attacks against Gaza. In 1954, the Uzi submachine gun first entered use by the IDF. In 1955, the Egyptian government began recruiting former Nazi rocket scientists for a missile program. This type of conflict is probably interesting. 1953 and 1956. Fedayeen, in 1956. Intermittent clashes all along... Oh, sorry. Intermittent clashes along all of Israel's borders as Arab terrorism and breaches of the ceasefire resulting in Israeli counter raids Palestinian. List of attacks against Israeli civilians before 1967. So from 53 to 56. Oh, Jesus. Okay, well, let's see. Gunmen attacked a farming community near Lod. What's this music? It's probably I don't know. Can you just push in exclamation mark playlist? Doesn't it pop up my whole YouTube playlist? Gunmen attacked a farming community near Lod and killed one of the residents. The gunmen threw hand grenades and sprayed gunfire in all directions. On the same night, another group of terrorists attacked a house in the town of Hadera. This occurred a day after Israel and Jordan signed an agreement with UN mediation in which Jordan undertook to prevent terrorists from crossing into Israel from Jordanian territory. Attackers infiltrating from Jordan destroyed a house in the farming village of Mishmar Ayalan. Gunmen attacked a young couple in their home in Kfar Hess and shot them to death. Attackers infiltrated from Jordan and reached the neighborhood of Kataman. Okay, so terrorist attacks attempted to infiltrate Israel by sea multiple times from Jordan. Yehud attack, a Palestinian Fedayeen squad threw a grenade into a civilian house in Yehud, killing a woman and 2 children. Arabic term to refer to various military groups willing to sacrifice themselves for a larger campaign. Bandits ambushed a bus traveling from Eilat to Tel Aviv and opened fire at short range when the bus reached the area of Makval, the northern Negev. In the initial ambush, the bandits killed the driver and wounded most of the passengers. The bandits then boarded the bus and shot some of the passengers one by one. 11 passengers were murdered. Survivors recounted how the murderers spat on the bodies and abused them. The massacre was apparently a reprisal raid conducted by members of a Bedouin tribe expelled from the Al-Auja region of the Sinai 3.5 years earlier. Gunmen attacked and killed 2 hikers in the Judean desert. Gunmen threw hand grenades on a Palestinian Fidian. Gunmen opened fire at a synagogue. Where did most of these people come from? Were they all coming from Jordan or other surrounding Arab countries, I guess? And from Egypt. Bedouin? Okay. Yeah, it sounds like from Jordan, because Jordan owned all of the West Bank at this point still, I believe, right? Multiple times from Jordan, West Bank. I should put that. That's good to know, because it is from the West Bank. Oh, and from Egypt, occupied Gaza. Netanyahu tweeted proof that hospital holds Hamas HQs. Is this implicit rationale for why did it be hit? Isn't this contradicting previous denial? No, there are other hospitals that Hamas uses. The Harvard doxing truck guy was just raided by SWAT. Someone said he was holding a gun to his wife's head. Jesus Christ. Okay. The Suez Crisis. Let's mark this. We have some conflict. The second, oh wait, this is 1956. Let's do exact dates. October 29th, 1956 through November 7th, 1956. The Second Arab-Israeli War, or the Suez Crisis. The IDF uploaded a video press conference saying they approved that Hamas is operating at the biggest hospital in Gaza. Yeah, I don't think that was ever contested. I'm pretty sure that's in Wikipedia, that hospital. That's literally what they do. There's a name for it. I think we've seen it before. Earlier, you read the terrorist attack was a reprisal by Palestinian survivors of Israeli ethnic cleansing. Don't you think it's important to add that context? No, not really. The Suez Crisis of the Second Arab-Israeli War, also called the Tripartite Aggression. Okay. Okay, boom, boom. Okay. The Suez Crisis. Wait, wrong. The Suez Canal is down here. All right. The Suez Crisis of the Second Arab-Israeli War, also called the Tripartite, I guess, aggression in the Arab world, and the Sinai War in Israel, was an invasion of Egypt and the Gaza Strip, in late 1956 by Israel, followed by the United Kingdom and France. The aims were to regain control of the Suez Canal for the Western powers and to remove Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser, who had just nationalized the foreign-owned Suez Canal Company, which administered the canal. Israel's primary objective was to reopen the blocked Straits of Tiran. After the fighting had started, political pressure from the United States, the Soviet Union, and the United Nations led to a withdrawal by the three invaders. The episode humiliated the United Kingdom and France and strengthened Nasser. On July 26, 1956, Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal Company, which prior to that was owned primarily by British and French shareholders. On the 29th of October, Israel invaded the Gaza Strip and the Egyptian Sinai. Here, before I get into this, let me use the restroom real quick. 1 second. Hold on. Why isn't that important context to add? Because I imagine probably almost every single attack that's going to be coming against Israel is going to be probably from largely displaced Arabs. It's assumed, of course. What do you mean? Yeah. Britain and France issued a joint ultimatum to ceasefire, which was ignored. On the 5th of November, Britain and France landed paratroopers along the Suez Canal. The Egyptian forces, before they were defeated, blocked all ship traffic by sinking 40 ships in the canal. It later became clear that Israel, France, and Britain had conspired to plan the invasion. The three allies had attained a number of their military objectives, but the canal was useless. Heavy political pressure from the United States and the USSR led to a withdrawal. U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower had strongly warned Britain not to invade. He threatened serious damage to the British financial system by selling the U.S. government's pound sterling bonds. Historians conclude the crisis signified the end of Great Britain's role as one of the world's major powers. Wait, what? How would the United States selling British bonds hurt the British economy? They still owe the money, right? No? Or... it lowers the price? Really? Last one, because this is expensive. You don't have to donate 10 euros every time, or you just tag me in chat. You don't have to keep donating money to tag me. How come horrible things Israelis do are footnotes, but horrible things Palestinians do are meticulously detailed? Bro, there are so many other lefty things you can go donate to. I don't want you asking me these retarded fucking questions, okay? Both sides have meticulously detailed the crimes of the other side, okay? Go read somewhere else, okay? Okay. The Suez Canal was closed from October 1956 until March 1957. Israel fulfilled some of its objectives, such as attaining freedom of navigation through the Straits of Tiran, which Egypt had blocked to Israeli shipping since 1948 to 1950. Edmund, thank you for another $50. Jesus. Okay. Egypt. No, let's just wait before I write anything. As a result of the conflict, the United Nations created the UNEF peacekeepers to police the Egyptian-Israeli border. British Prime Minister Anthony Eden resigned. Canadian External Affairs Minister Lester Pearson won the Nobel Peace Prize, and the USSR may have been emboldened to invade Hungary. Oh, this was the tanky thing, right? Yes, the Hungarian Revolution of 1956. This is where I think they literally squished people with tanks, I think. History of the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal was opened in 1969 after 10 years of work financed by the French and Egyptian governments. The canal was operated by the Universal Company of the Suez Maritime Canal, an Egyptian chartered company. The area surrounding the canal remained sovereign Egyptian territory and the only land bridge between Africa and Asia. Wait, 1869, not 1969. What? Up here? Oh, this was 1869. If I might have misspoke, sorry. The canal was operated by the... Okay. The canal instantly became strategically important as it provided the shortest ocean link between the Mediterranean Sea and the Indian Ocean. The canal eased commerce for trading nations and particularly helped European colonial powers to gain and govern their colonies. In 1875, as a result of debt and financial crisis, Egypt was forced to sell its shares in the canal operating company to the British government of Benjamin Disraeli. They were willing buyers and obtained a 44% share in the Suez Canal Company for £4 million, equivalent to £401 million in 2021. In 1875, as a result of debt, blah, blah, blah. Okay. With the 1882 invasion and occupation of Egypt, the UK took de facto control of the country, as well as the canal proper, its finances, and operations. The 1888 Convention of Constantinople declared the canal a neutral zone under British protection. In ratifying it, the Ottoman Empire agreed to permit international shipping to pass freely through the canal in times of war and peace. The convention came into force in 1904, the same year as the Entente Cordiale between Britain and France. Despite this convention, the strategic importance of the Suez Canal and its control were proven during the Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905, after Japan and Britain entered into a separate bilateral agreement. Following the Japanese surprise attack on the Russian Pacific Fleet based at Port Arthur, where is Port Arthur? Wait, did I click the wrong thing? Lushonkyo District is a district of Dalian, Liaolong Province. Jesus fucking Christ. It was formerly known as Port Arthur. Oh. Dalian, you mean like Daliban? What the fuck is this? Jesus Christ. I don't know anything about Asian geography. Entente. Gotcha. Okay. Entente. Entente. The Russians sent reinforcements from their fleet in the Baltic Sea. The British denied the Russian Baltic Fleet use of the canal after the Dogger Bank incident and forced it to steam around the Cape of Good Hope in Africa, giving the Imperial Japanese Armed Forces time to consolidate their position in East Asia. How many more, like, days or weeks of travel time would that be? Like, back then in 1900. If you had to sail all the way around Africa instead of being able to just go through the canal, is this like weeks of time? I have no idea like how fast. It's a month. I think it's an 8-week journey over 2 months, like a month, 10 days, 20 more minutes each way. I could do it in a few minutes. Okay. Wow, Femboy Cardi, thanks for gifting 5 subs. The importance of the canal as a strategic intersection was again apparent during the First World War when Britain and France closed the canal to non-Allied shipping. The attempt by the German-led Ottoman Fourth Army to storm the canal in February of 1915 led the British to commit 100,000 troops to the defense of Egypt for the rest of the war. The canal continued to be strategically important after the Second World War as a conduit for the shipment of oil. Petroleum business historian Daniel Jurgen wrote of the period, in 1948 the canal abruptly lost its traditional rationale. British control over the canal could no longer be preserved on grounds that it was critical to the defense of either of India or of an empire that was being liquidated, and yet at exactly the same moment the canal was gaining a new role as the highway not of empire but of oil. By 1955, petroleum accounted for half of the canal's traffic, and in turn, 2/3 of Europe's oil passed through it. At the time, Western Europe imported 2 million barrels per day from the Middle East, 1.2 million by tanker through the canal, and another 800,000 via pipeline from the Persian Gulf, the Trans-Arabian Pipeline, and Kirkuk to the Mediterranean, where tankers received it. The U.S. imported another 300,000 barrels daily from the Middle East, though pipelines linked the oil fields of the Kingdom of Iraq and the Persian Gulf states to the Mediterranean. These routes were prone to suffer from instability. The British part of the Kirkuk Haifa oil pipeline was forced to close in 1948, which led British leaders to prefer to use the sea route through the Suez Canal. As it was, the rise of supertankers for shipping Middle East oil to Europe, which were too big to use the Suez Canal, meant that British policymakers greatly overestimated the importance of the canal. By 2000, only 8% of the imported oil in Britain arrived via the Suez Canal, with the rest coming from the Cape route. By 2000, that's skipping ahead a lot of years, but okay. An oil tanker, known as a petroleum tanker, is a ship designed for bulk transport of oil or its products. How many barrels of oil can one supertanker carry? Capacity. DWT had a capacity of, what is this, deadweight tonnage. I wonder how much that is in like barrels of oil. Oh, and a cargo capacity of 3.16 million barrels of oil. Do they actually come in individual barrels, or is it all just like do they package it there? I can't imagine the ship would transport barrels. It must just transport like raw, like crude in giant containers or something, right? Otherwise, it would be like so much wasted space, no? It's a tank, yeah. It comes in Capri Sun pouches, nice. Barrel is a unit of measure. Actually, yeah, that's true too. They probably, at very few points are they ever in actual physical barrels. It's probably just, yeah, that makes sense. In August of 1956, the Royal Institute of International Affairs published a report titled Britain and the Suez Canal, revealing government perception of the Suez Canal. It reiterates several times the strategic necessity of the Suez Canal to the United Kingdom, including the need to meet military obligations under the Manila Pact in the Far East and the Baghdad Pact in Iraq, Iran, or Pakistan. The report also points out that the canal had been used in wartime to transport material and personnel from and to the UK's closest allies in Australia and New Zealand, and might be vital for such purposes in the future. The report also cites the amount of material and oil that passes through the canal to the United Kingdom, and the economic consequences of the canal being put out of commission, concluding the possibility of the canal being closed to troop ships makes the question of the control and regime of the canal as important to Britain today as it ever was. After 1945, in the aftermath of the Second World War, Britain's military strength was spread throughout the region, including the vast military complex at Suez with a garrison of some 80,000 troops, making it one of the largest military installations in the world. The Suez base... Wow, Patrick Star, thanks for gifting 5 subs in Kick Chat. The Suez base was considered an important part of Britain's strategic position in the Middle East. However, it became a source of growing tension in Anglo-Egyptian relations. When people say Anglo-Saxon or Anglo, that's always referring to just the UK? Or is it ever referring to like broader parts of Western Europe as well? Just the UK. Destiny, it took twice as long for the Russian fleet because they weren't allowed through the Suez. 7 months versus 3.5 months. Jesus. How do you even like, how do you just make a trip that would have been like 3 months, or like 3 months, 7 months? Like, do you always carry so much food and shit on your boats that it's just like you can stay out at sea for indefinite periods of time? Or do they dock in places and buy shit? Or in this conflict, just the UK, but if you start going back 300 years, Anglo refers to bigger area. They have fishing nets. Okay. In the aftermath of the Second World War, Britain's military... Okay, here we go. Egypt's post-war domestic politics were experiencing a radical change, prompted in no small part by economic instability, inflation, and unemployment. Unrest began to manifest itself in the growth of radical political groups, such as the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, and an increasingly hostile attitude towards Britain and its presence in the country. Added to this anti-British fervor, was the role Britain had played in the creation of Israel. In October of 1951, the Egyptian government unilaterally abrogated the Anglo-Egyptian Treaty of 1936. Unilaterally abrogated? Does that mean you just make it on your own without the other side agreeing? The terms of which granted Britain a lease on the Suez base for 20 more years. Britain refused to withdraw from Suez, relying upon its treaty rights as well as the presence of the Suez garrison. The price of such a course of action was a steady escalation in violent hostility towards Britain and British troops in Egypt, which the Egyptian authorities did little to curb. On the 25th of January 1952, British forces attempted to disarm a troublesome auxiliary police force barracks in Ismailia, resulting in the deaths of 41 Egyptians. This in turn led to anti-Western riots in Cairo, resulting in heavy damage to property, and the deaths of several foreigners, including 11 British citizens. This proved to be a catalyst for the removal of the Egyptian monarchy. On the 23rd of January, a military coup by the Egyptian nationalists' Free Officers Movement, led by Mohammed Naguib and future Egyptian President Gamal Abdul Nasser, overthrew King Farouk and established an Egyptian republic. Where is Cairo on the map again? Cairo is the capital of Egypt, right? Cairo. It is. Okay. God damn, Egypt's a big old country. What the fuck? All right. Check the population density of Egypt. Egypt is one of those huge countries, like over, 110 million people. It's a lot of dudes here. Egypt's literally crammed up against the Nile. Oh, they all probably live, like close to the... Egypt population density map. Nice. Post-Egyptian Revolution period. In the 1950s, the Middle East was dominated by four interlinked conflicts: the Cold War, the geopolitical battle for influence between the United States and the Soviet Union; the Arab Cold War, the race between different Arab states for the leadership of the Arab world; the anti-colonial struggle of Arab nationalists against the two remaining imperial powers, Britain and France, in particular the Algerian War; and the Arab-Israeli conflict, the political and military conflict between the Arab countries and Israel. The Algerian War was a major armed conflict between France and the Algerian National Liberation Front from 1954 to 1962, which led to Algeria winning its independence from France. An important decolonization war. It was a complex conflict characterized as guerrilla warfare and war crimes. Jeez, based. The conflict also became a civil war between the different communities and within the communities. The war took place mainly in the territory of Algeria, with repercussions in metropolitan France. Effectively started by members of the National Liberation Front during the Toussaint Rouge, the conflict led to serious political crises in France, causing the fall of the Fourth Republic to be replaced by the Fifth Republic with a strengthened presidency. The brutality of the methods employed by the French forces failed to win hearts and minds in Algeria, alienated support of metropolitan France, and discredited French prestige abroad. As the war dragged on, the French public slowly turned against it, and many of France's key allies, including the US, switched from supporting France to abstaining in the UN debate on Algeria. After major demonstrations in Algiers and several other cities in favor of independence, and a United Nations resolution recognizing the right to independence, Charles de Gaulle, the first president of the Fifth Republic, decided to open a series of negotiations with the FLN. These concluded with the signing of the Evian Accords in March 1962. A referendum took place, and the French electorate approved the final result. Okay. The planned French withdrawal led to a state crisis. This included various assassination attempts on de Gaulle, as well as some attempts at military coups. Most of the former were carried out by the Organisation Armée Secrète, an underground organization formed mainly from French military personnel supporting a French Algeria, which committed a large number of bombings and murders both in Algeria and in the homeland to stop the planned independence. The war caused between the death of 400,000 and 1.5 million Algerians, 25,600 French soldiers, and 6,000 Europeans. War crimes committed during the war included the massacres of civilians, rape, and torture. The French destroyed over 8,000 villages and relocated over 2 million Algerians to concentration camps. Upon independence in 1962, 900,000... what is this donut? Will you ask Ben anything about his COVID denialism? Maybe COVID will come up. No fuck. I don't even know what the fuck where Algeria is on the which country it is. Allergia. Nice. Based. Oh, makes sense. Right next to fucking Tunisia. Damn. Imagine losing all of this because you suck as a country. Based. Let's see. And this war was 54 to 62. Okay. Egypt and Britain. Britain's desire to mend Anglo-Egyptian relations in the wake of the coup saw the country strive for rapprochement throughout 1953 and 1954. Part of this process was the agreement in 1953 to terminate British rule by Sudan. By 1956, in Sudan, by 1956, it returned for Cairo's abandoning of its claim to suzerainty over the Nile Valley region. The fuck does this word mean? Includes the rights and obligations of a person, state, or other polity, which controls the foreign policy and relations of a tributary state. Jesus, these guys are playing like fucking Stellaris or Heroes of... What is Hoi again? Everybody plays that fucking game. Hearts of Iron, that one, yeah. In October of 1954, Britain and Egypt concluded the Anglo-Egyptian Agreement of 1954 on the phased evacuation of British armed forces troops from the Suez base, the terms of which agreed to withdrawal of all troops within 20 months, maintenance of the base to be continued, and for Britain to hold the right to return for 7 years. What does that mean? Like if they need to go back and pick up shit or something? The Suez Canal Company was not due to revert to the Egyptian government until the 16th of November, 1968, under the terms of the treaty. Britain's close relationship with the two Hashemite kingdoms of Iraq and Jordan were of particular concern to Nasser. In particular, Iraq's increasingly amicable relations with Britain were a threat to Nasser's desire to see Egypt as head of the Arab world. The creation of the Baghdad Pact in 1955 seemed to confirm Nasser's fears that Britain was attempting to draw the Eastern Arab world into a bloc centered upon Iraq and sympathetic to Britain. Nasser's response was a series of challenges to British influence in the region that would culminate in the Suez Crisis. Egypt and Arab leadership. In regard to the Arab leadership, particularly venomous, was the feud between Nasser and the Prime Minister of Iraq, Nuri al-Said, for Arab leadership. with the Cairo-based Voice of the Arabs radio station regularly calling for the overthrow of the government in Baghdad. When you talk about these countries in the 50s, are the borders of Iraq and Egypt roughly the same as the borders they are today? Or are these countries like significantly different looking, or? Look up maps. 1950s Middle East map. The Middle East in 1950. Okay, so Egypt is here. Looks like this. Iraq is here. Okay, so like roughly about the same. It looks like the same. And then here's Jordan, and we can see they own the West Bank. Cute. Oh, and you see Egypt owns the Gaza Strip here as well. All that red is the United Kingdom. Iraq bordered Israel at this point, remember? No, I don't remember. I don't think Iraq ever bordered. At any point in time, I don't think Iraq bordered Israel. No? Well, almost Limeo. Okay. Why is Jordan so big? Because it's my dick. The most important factors that drove Egyptian foreign policy in this period was, on the one hand, a determination to see the Middle East as Egypt's rightful sphere of influence, and on the other hand, a tendency on the part of Nasser to fortify his pan-Arabist and nationalist credibility by seeking to oppose any and all Western security initiatives in the Near East. What does the Near East mean? Nasser and his generation. Near East. Geography. Today, the region of the Near East is imprecise and overlaps with the Middle East. It typically refers to Southwest Asia, particularly Turkey, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Israel, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia, and other nations of the Arabian Peninsula. Oh, okay, so that whole, like, stretching down to, like, Yemen and Oman, maybe, I guess, maybe? Including that. Including the historical Fertile Crescent, the Levant, Anatolia, East Thrace, and Egypt. Wait, I don't even know what the fuck I'm looking at here. What the fuck is this? Is this Turkey up here? And then Israel, Lebanon, Egypt. Oh, it must be, right? Because this is the fucking Suez Canal or some shit. Okay. Where were we? Okay. Despite the establishment of such an agreement with the British, Nasser's position remained tenuous. The loss of Egypt's claim to Sudan, coupled with the continued presence of Britain at Suez for a further 2 years, led to domestic unrest, including an assassination attempt against him in October of 1954. You're in a bulletproof car and someone shoots at you, and then you get out and shoot back. Could you use... What? Stop. Why? Why would you even ask for this analogy? The tenuous nature of Nasser's rule caused him to believe that neither his regime nor Egypt's independence would be safe until Egypt had established itself as the head of the Arab world. This would manifest itself in the challenging of British Middle Eastern interests throughout 1955. U.S. in a defense treaty against the Soviet threat. The United States, while attempting to erect an alliance in the form of a Middle East Defense Organization to keep the Soviet Union out of the Near East, tried to woo Nasser into this alliance. The central problem for American policy in the Middle East was that this region was perceived... was that this region was perceived as strategically important due to its oil, but the United States, weighed down by defense commitments in Europe and the Far East, lacked sufficient troops to resist a Soviet invasion of the Middle East. In 1952, General Omar Bradley of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff declared at a planning session about what to do in the event of a Soviet invasion of the Near East. Where will the staff come from? It will take a lot of stuff to do a job there. As a consequence, American diplomats favored the creation of a NATO-type organization in the Near East to provide the necessary military power to deter the Soviets from invading the region. The Eisenhower administration, even more than the Truman administration, saw the Near East as a huge gap into which Soviet influence could be projected, and accordingly required an American-supported security system. American diplomat Raymond Hare, later recalled, "It's hard to put ourselves back in this period. There was really a definite fear of hostilities, of an active Russian occupation of the Middle East physically, and you could practically hear the Russian boots clumping down over the hot desert sands." The projected Middle East Defense Organization was to be centered on Egypt. A United States National Security Council directive of March 1953 called Egypt the key to the Near East and advised that Washington should develop Egypt as a point of strength. Destiny. Near East is an antiquated term, so the Near doesn't really play anymore. In the pre-modern era, it referred to the Ottoman Empire. Now, it sounds like Near East is basically like the parts of the Middle East and the oceanic and sea passages that are basically relevant to Europe and the United States. That's basically what it sounds like Near East would be. So like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, like everything relating to like the passage between that, like the Suez Canal essentially, and then into the Mediterranean. That's what it sounds like. Maybe, I guess. Yeah, Turkey, yeah. A major dilemma for American policy was that the two strongest powers in the Near East, Britain and France, were also the nations whose influence many local nationalists most resented. From 1953 onwards, American diplomacy had attempted unsuccessfully to persuade the powers involved in the Near East, both local and imperial, to set aside their differences and unite against the Soviet Union. The Americans took the view that, just as fear of the Soviet Union had helped to end the historic Franco-German enmity, so too could anti-communism and the more recent Arab-Israeli dispute. It was a source of constant puzzlement to American officials in the 1950s that the Arab states and the Israelis had seemed to have more interest in fighting each other rather than uniting against the Soviet Union. Citation needed on that. After his visit to the Middle East in May of 1953 to drum support for MEDO, the Middle East Defense Organization, the Secretary of State John Foster Dulles found much of his astonishment that the Arab states were more fearful of Zionism than of the communists. The policy of the United States was colored by considerable uncertainty as to whom to befriend in the Near East. American policy was torn between a desire to maintain good relations with NATO allies, such as Britain and France, who were also major colonial powers, and a desire to align Third World nationalists with the Free World camp. Third World in this case refers to, I believe, unaligned states in the Cold War, meaning people that weren't part of the United States sphere of influence or part of the Soviet or Warsaw Pact sphere of influence. Third World doesn't necessarily mean just like dumb, shitty, bad country. Like today we use like Third World to refer like, oh, Third World country, whatever, but the term Third World arose during the Cold War and it was used to define countries that remained non-aligned with either NATO or the Warsaw Pact. Yeah, just this here. The policy of the United States was colored by considerable uncertainty as to whom to befriend in the Near East. American policy was torn between a desire to maintain good relations with NATO allies, such as Britain and France, who were also major colonial powers, and a desire to align Third World nationalists with the Free World camp. Though it would be entirely false to describe the coup deposing King Farouk in July 1952 as a Central Intelligence Agency coup, Nasser and his Society of Free Officers were nonetheless in close contact with CIA operatives led by Miles Copeland beforehand. Nasser maintains links with any and all potential allies, from the Egyptian Communist Party on the left to the Muslim Brotherhood on the right. Nasser's friendship with certain CIA officers in Cairo led Washington to vastly overestimate its influence in Egypt. Nasser was close to CIA officers led the Americans for a time to view Nasser as a CIA asset. In turn, the British, who were aware of Nasser's CIA ties, deeply resented this relationship, which they viewed as an American attempt to push them out of Egypt. The principal reason for Nasser's courting of the CIA before the July Revolution of 1952 was his hope that the Americans would act as a restraining influence on the British should Britain decide on intervention to put an end to the revolution, until Egypt renounced it in 1951. The 1936 Anglo-Egyptian Treaty allowed Britain the right of intervention against all foreign and domestic threats. In turn, many American officials, such as Ambassador Jefferson Caffrey, saw the continued British military presence in Egypt as anachronistic and viewed the Revolutionary Command Council, as Nasser called his government after the coup, in a highly favorable light. Caffrey was consistently very positive about Nasser in his reports to Washington right up until his departure from Cairo in 1955. The regime of King Farouk was viewed in Washington as weak, corrupt, unstable, and anti-American, so the Free Officers' July coup was welcomed by the United States. As it was, Nasser's contacts with the CIA were not necessary to prevent British intervention against the July coup, as Anglo-Egyptian relations had deteriorated so badly in 51 to 52 that the British viewed any Egyptian government not headed by King Farouk as a huge improvement. In May of 1953, during a meeting with Secretary Dulles, who asked Egypt to join an anti-Soviet alliance, Nasser responded by saying that the Soviet Union has never occupied our territory, but the British have been here for 70 years. How can I go to my people and tell them I'm disregarding a killer with a pistol 60 miles from me at the Suez Canal to worry about somebody who's holding a knife 1,000 miles away? Dulles informed Nasser of his belief that the Soviet Union was seeking world conquest. Let's see. Dulles was our Secretary of State, right? Okay. Dulles? How do you pronounce this? Dulles? 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 Nasser did not share Dulles' fear of the Soviet Union taking over the Middle East and insisted quite vehemently that he wanted to see the total end of all British influence, not only in Egypt, but all of the Middle East. The CIA offered Nasser a $3 million bribe if he would join the proposed Middle East Defense Organization. Nasser took the money, but then refused to join. Good one. At most, Nasser made it clear to the Americans that he wanted an Egyptian-dominated Arab League to be the principal defense organization in the Near East, which might be informally associated with the United States. After he returned to Washington, Dulles advised Eisenhower that the Arab states believed the United States will back the new state of Israel in aggressive expansion. Our basic political problem is to improve the Muslim states' attitudes towards Western democracies because our prestige in that area has been in constant decline ever since the war. Muslim meaning Muslim, I guess? I don't know why they say that sometimes. The immediate consequence was a new policy of even-handedness, where the United States very publicly sided with the Arab states in several disputes with Israel in 1953 to 1954. Interesting. From 53 to 54 was when there was terror attacks in Israel. I wonder what conflicts these were. Moreover, Dulles did not share any sentimental regard for the Anglo-American special relationship, which led the Americans to lean towards the Egyptian side in the Anglo-Egyptian disputes. I thought I heard something. During the extremely difficult negotiations over the British evacuation of the Suez Canal base in 1954 to 1955, the Americans generally supported Egypt, though at the same time trying hard to limit the extent of that damage that this might cause to the Anglo-American relations. Um, 56. Neff, 1981. Warriors at Suez Canal. Eisenhower takes America into the Middle East. Huh. I'd be curious more what this looked like, but in the same report of May of 1953 to President Dwight D. Eisenhower, you can pronounce it Sway Canal? UN teachers called to murder Jews reveals a new report. Are you sure, mate? Okay, stop linking me in my subreddit shit. You ain't got the answer, Sway Canal. Good one. Dulles stated that the Egyptians were not interested in joining the proposed Medo. That the Arabs were more interested in their disputes with the British, the British, the French, the Israelis, and each other, than in standing against the Soviets, and that the northern tier states of Turkey, Iran, Pakistan were more useful as allies at present than Egypt. The northern states of Turkey, Iran, and Pakistan were more useful as allies at present than Egypt. I guess the US doesn't give a fuck about the Suez Canal then at this point. Accordingly, the best American policy towards Egypt was to work towards Arab-Israeli peace and the settlement of the Anglo-Egyptian dispute over the British Suez Canal base as the best way of securing Egypt's ultimate adhesion to an American-sponsored alliance centered on the northern tier states. The Northern Tier Alliance was achieved in early 1955 with the creation of the Baghdad Pact, comprising Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, Iraq, and the United Kingdom. The presence of the last two states was due to the British desire to continue to maintain influence in the Middle East, and Nuri Said's wish to associate his country with the West as the best way of counterbalancing the increased aggressive Egyptian claims to regional predominance. Nuri Said, this is the Iraqi leader right now, right? I think. Yes, former Prime Minister of Iraq. I don't know why they call him Nuri Said instead of Al Said sometimes, but whatever. The conclusion of the Baghdad Pact occurred almost simultaneously with a dramatic Israeli reprisal operation on the Gaza Strip on the 20th of February, 1955, and retaliation for Palestinian Fedayeen raids into Israel, during which the Israeli Unit 101, commanded by Ariel Sharon, did some damage to Egyptian army forces. The close occurrence of the two events was mistakenly interpreted by Nasser as part of coordinated Western effort to push him into joining the Baghdad Pact. The signing of the Baghdad Pact and the Gaza raid marked the beginning of the end of Nasser's once good relations with the Americans. In particular, Nasser saw Iraq's participation in the Baghdad Pact as a Western attempt to promote his arch enemy, Nuri al-Said, as an alternative leader in the Arab world. Sharon? Let's just throw this up here just as a good Baghdad Pact. Wait, so why is the United States not part of this Baghdad Pact? This was like our goal, right? Or we wanted this? The best American policy towards Europe is to work towards... Or did we just not care? We didn't necessarily have to be a part of this because we can exert enough influence on the British, maybe, I guess? Sounds like the U.S. was trying to maximize Arab cooperation defense against USSR, something like that. Maybe they invited the U.S. and the U.S. didn't turn up, and that's why they're so angry at the U.S. Okay. Nasser and the Soviet bloc, instead of siding with either superpower, Nasser took the role of the spoiler and tried to play off the superpowers in order to have them compete with each other in attempts to buy his friendship. Under the new leadership of Nikita Khrushchev, the Soviet Union was making a major effort to win influence in the so-called Third World. As part of the diplomatic offensive, Khrushchev had abandoned Moscow's traditional line of treating all non-communists as enemies and adopted a new tactic of befriending so-called non-aligned nations, which often were led by leaders who were non-communists, but in varying ways and degrees were hostile towards the West. Khrushchev had realized that by treating non-communists as being the same thing as anti-communist, Moscow had needlessly alienated many potential friends over the years in the Third World. Under the banner of anti-imperialism, Khrushchev made it clear that the Soviet Union would provide arms to any left-wing government in the Third World as a way of undercutting Western influence. Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai met Nasser at the 1955 Bandung Conference and was impressed by him. Zhou recommended that Khrushchev treat Nasser as a potential ally. Zhou described Nasser to Khrushchev as a young nationalist who, though no communist, could, if used correctly, do much damage to Western interests in the Middle East. Marshal Josip Broz Tito of Yugoslavia, who also came to know Nasser at the Bandung Conference, told Khrushchev in a 1955 meeting that Nasser was a young man without much political experience, but if we give him the benefit of the doubt, we might be able to exert a beneficial influence on him, both for the sake of the communist movement and the Egyptian people. Traditionally, most of the equipment in the Egyptian military had come from Britain, but Nasser's desire to break British influence in Egypt meant that he was desperate to find a new source of weapons to replace Britain. Nasser had first broached the subject of buying weapons from the Soviet Union in 1954. Most of all, Nasser wanted the United States to supply arms on a generous scale to Egypt. Nasser refused to promise that any U.S. arms he might buy would not be used against Israel and rejected out of hand the American demand for a military advisory group to be sent to Egypt as part of the price of arms sales. Nasser's first choice of buying weapons was the United States. However, his frequent anti-Zionist speeches and sponsorship of the Palestinian Fedayeen, who made frequent raids into Israel, rendered it difficult for the Eisenhower administration to get the approval of Congress necessary to sell weapons to Egypt. American public opinion was deeply hostile towards selling arms to Egypt that might be used against Israel. Moreover, Eisenhower feared doing so could trigger a Middle Eastern arms race. Eisenhower very much valued the tripartite declaration, whatever the fuck, it's Fedayeen? I don't fucking know. As a way of keeping peace in the Near East. In 1950, in order to limit the extent that the Arabs and the Israelis could engage in an arms race, the three nations which dominated the arms trade in the non-communist world, namely the United States, the United Kingdom, and France, had signed the tripartite declaration, where they had committed themselves to limiting how much arms they could sell in the Near East, and also to ensuring that any arms sales to one side was matched by arms sales of equal quantity and quality to the other. That's kind of cute. Okay, let's look up some of these.
Tripartite Declaration of Principles.
Bro, really? Tripartite Declaration. Why am I getting Balfour Declaration? Tripartite. Seriously? I'm just gonna say tripartite then. Fuck it, I don't care. Fedayeen. Eisenhower viewed the tripartite declaration, which sharply restricted how many arms Egypt could buy in the West, as one of the key elements in keeping the peace between Israel and the Arabs, and believed that setting off an arms race would inevitably lead to a new war. For the US, France, and the UK to limit the amount of arms sales in the Middle East, hopefully preventing an arms race. Maybe, I guess, I don't know. The Egyptians made continuous attempts to purchase heavy arms from Czechoslovakia years before the 1955 deal. Nasser had let it be known in 54 to 55 that he was considering buying weapons from the Soviet Union and thus coming under Soviet influence as a way of pressuring the Americans into selling him the arms he desired. Khrushchev, who very much wanted to win the Soviet Union influence in the Middle East, was more than ready to arm Egypt. The Americans proved unwilling. During secret talks with the Soviets in 1955, Nasser's demands for weapons were more than amply satisfied as the Soviet Union had not signed the tripartite declaration. The news in September of 1955 of the Egyptian purchase of a huge quantity of Soviet arms via Czechoslovakia was greeted with shock and rage. Czechoslovakia, not Czechlo? Oh, is it Czechoslovakia? I'm sorry. Have I pronounced this incorrectly for literally my entire life? Czechoslovakia. Was it ever Czechoslovakia? Wait, have I been wrong on this for 34 years? During the secret talks with the Soviets in 1955, Nasser's demands for weapons more than met. The news in September of 1955 of the Egyptian purchase of a huge quantity of Soviet arms via Czechoslovakia was greeted with shock and rage in the West, where this was seen as a major increase in Soviet influence in the Near East. In Britain, the increase of Soviet influence in the Near East was seen as an ominous development that threatened to put an end to British influence in the oil-rich region. France and the Egyptian support for the Algerian rebellion. Over the same period, the French premier, Guy Mollet, I'm assuming, was facing an increasingly serious rebellion in Algeria, where the Algerian National Liberation Front rebels were being verbally supported by Egypt via transmissions of the Voice of the Arabs radio, financially supported with the Suez Canal revenue. And clandestinely owned Egyptian ships were shipping arms to the FLN. Mollet came to perceive Nasser as a major threat. During a visit to London in March of 1956, Mollet told Eden his country was faced with an Islamic threat to the very soul of France, supported by the Soviet Union. Mollet stated, "All this is in the works of Nasser, just as Hitler's policy was written down in Mein Kampf. Nasser has the ambition to recreate the conquests of Islam, but his present position is largely due to the policy of the West in building up and flattering him." In May of 1956, gatherings of French veterans, Louis Mangin, fuck me, dude, spoke in place of the unavailable Minister of Defense and gave a violently anti-Nasser speech, which compared the Egyptian leader to Hitler. He accused Nasser of plotting to rule the entire Middle East and of seeking to annex Algeria, whose people live in community with France. Mangin urged France to stand up to Nasser, and being a strong friend of Israel, urged an alliance with that nation against Egypt. Just Lexi, $15. Czechoslovakia, good one, dude. Egypt and Israel. Prior to 1955, Nasser had pursued efforts to reach peace with Israel and had worked to prevent cross-border Palestinian attacks. In February of 1955, Unit 101, an Israeli unit under Ariel Sharon, conducted a raid on the Egyptian army headquarters in Gaza in retaliation for a Palestinian Fedayeen, I don't remember how much attack that killed an Israeli civilian. As a result of the incident, Nasser began allowing raids into Israel by the Palestinian militants. Egypt established Fedayeen bases not just in Gaza, but also in Jordan and Lebanon, from which incursions could be launched with a greater amount of plausible deniability on the part of Nasser's Egypt. The raids triggered a series of Israeli reprisal operations, which ultimately contributed to the Suez Crisis. Wait, how does Egypt establish Fedayeen bases in Jordan and Lebanon? Were Jordan and Lebanon just like chill with that? Or I don't understand that. I think Pan-Arabism was big back then, so they probably just goodwill. Oh, they just didn't give a fuck because of the Pan-Arab shit. Okay. Egypt was responsible for establishing multiple Palestinian Fedayeen camps inside Gaza, Jordan, and Lebanon. Franco-Israeli alliance emerges. Starting in 1949, owing to shared nuclear research, France and Israel started to move towards an alliance. Following the outbreak of the Algerian War in late 1954, France began to ship more and more arms to Israel. In November of 1954, the Director General of Israel's Ministry of Defense, Shimon Peres, visited Paris, where he was received by the French Defense Minister, Marie-Pierre Koenig. What the fuck are these letters, bro? Come on. Who told him that France would sell Israel any weapons it wanted to buy. What happened to the tripartite declaration? Did nobody give a fuck? Or when did this end? Like, how are they selling arms to Israel if they're not supposed to be arming anybody? This was US, France, and the UK. It was a joint statement by the US, UK, and France to guarantee the territorial status quo that had determined and developed the discussions of the armistice. Oh, maybe because the Soviets started selling weapons to Egypt, they were like, fuck it, let's go. Oh yeah, right here. The Czech arms deal of December 1955, which the Soviet Union agreed to sell Egypt 250 million worth of modern weaponry, made irrelevant Western efforts to limit the flow of arms. And in 56, France began to... Okay, yeah, because of the Czech... Yeah, makes sense. Because France are spineless fucks that sold arms to everyone always. Well, it seems like they weren't selling arms to Egypt until the Soviet Union broke through that, so... Tripartite. Tripartite? What's your food opinion on Runza? 10 out of 10 restaurant. Super good. Amazing. Midwest superiority. It's not like us Czechs had a choice. We were occupied by the Soviets and they sold it for us. Sure. I was just talking about they were Warsaw Pact country, but it was the Soviets selling it. I'm sure. I'm not blaming the Czechs. Or maybe I will blame you. Fuck you. I don't care. I don't give a fuck. Eastern Europe? Southern Europe? Czechos? Not Western Europe, okay? Okay, where were we? Central Europe. What the fuck is Central Europe? Bruv. France agreed to totally disregard the Oh. I should have just read one more sentence. The tripartite declaration and supply even more weapons to Israel. During the same visit, Paris informed the French that Israel had decided upon war with Egypt in 1956. Perez claimed that Nasser was a genocidal maniac intent upon not only destroying Israel, but also exterminating its people, and as such, Israel wanted a war before Egypt received even more Soviet weapons, and there was still a possibility of victory for the Jewish state. Perez asked for the French, who had emerged as Israel's closest ally by this point, to give Israel all the help they could give in the coming war. Frustration of British aims. Throughout 1955 and 1956, Nasser pursued a number of policies that would frustrate British aims throughout the Middle East. The Sykes-Picot Agreement. He asked me this, I wasn't 100% ready. So this was the secret treaty in 1916 between the UK and France, with assent from the Russian Empire and the Kingdom of Italy to define their mutually agreed spheres of influence and control and an eventual partition of the Ottoman Empire. And then the Balfour Declaration this was just the UK's agreement saying, listen, we're gonna do our best to set you guys up in historic Palestine. But this didn't bind them, I think, much to anything. I have much pleasure in conveying to you on behalf of His Majesty's government the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the Cabinet. His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. I shall be grateful if you would bring this declaration to the knowledge of the Zionist Federation. Dustin, have you seen Imran's new product, beer brewed using her own yeast? I don't know. Do you have any books you recommend, fiction or self-help? If audiobook, even better? I can't think of any. Okay. During the same visit, Paris informed the French that Israel decided upon war with Egypt in 1956. Paris claimed that Nasser was a genocidal maniac. And okay. Frustration of British aims. Throughout 1955 and 1956, Nasser pursued a number of policies that would frustrate British aims throughout the Middle East and result in increasing hostility between Britain and Egypt. Nasser saw Iraq's inclusion in the Baghdad Pact as indicating that the United States and Britain had sided with his much-hated arch-nemesis, Nuri al-Sayyid's efforts to be the leader of the Arab world. And much of the motivation for Nasser's turn to an active anti-Western policy starting in 1955 was due to his displeasure with the Baghdad Pact. For Nasser, attendance at such events as the Bandung Conference in April 1955 served as both the means of striking a posture as a global leader and of playing hard to get in his talks with the Americans, especially his demand that the United States sell him vast quantities of arms. Nasser played on the widespread suspicion that any Western defense pact was merely veiled colonialism and that Arab disunity and weakness, especially in the struggle with Israel, was a consequence of British machinations. He also began to align Egypt with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, whose rulers were hereditary enemies of the Hashemites, in an effort to frustrate British efforts to draw Syria, Jordan, and Lebanon into the orbit of the Baghdad Pact. Nasser struck a further blow against Britain by negotiating an arms deal with communist Czechoslovakia in September of 1955, thereby ending Egypt's reliance on Western arms. The Hashemites, also House of Hashim, are the royal family of Jordan, which they have ruled since 1921 and were the royal family of the kingdoms of Hejaz, Syria, and Iraq. The family had ruled the city of Mecca continuously for the 10th century, frequently as vassals of outside powers, and were given the thrones of the Hejaz, Syria, and Iraq, and Jordan following their World War I alliance with the British Empire. The region became known as the Sharifian solution. So many solutions. Before World War I, Hussein bin Ali clan ruled the Hejaz, and by then I'm a sultan. For some time, they've been practicing. These are the guys that made a deal with the British or whatever, right? Hussein regarded Arab unity as synonymous with his own kingship. He aspired to have the entire Arab peninsula, Greater Syria, and Iraq under his and his descendants' rule. After a year of fruitless negotiations, Sir Henry McMahon conveyed the British government's agreement to recognize Arab independence over an area that was much more limited than that which was the result. The Anglo plot and its essence broke out in June 1916. Britain financed the revolt despite arms provisions, direct artillery support, and experts in desert warfare, including the soon-to-be famous T.E. Lawrence. The Hashemites promised more than they were able to deliver, and their ambitious plan collapsed. There were only a small number of Syrian and Iraqi nationalists who joined under the Sharifan banner, while others remained loyal to the Ottoman Sultan. Nasser in I feel like we're not going to get through the actual Suez crisis tonight. Nasser and Jordan. Nasser frustrated British attempts to draw Jordan into the pact by sponsoring demonstrations in Amman, leading King Hussein of Jordan in the Arabization of the Jordanian Army Command to dismiss the British commander of the Arab Legion, Sir John Bagot Glubb, known to the Arabs as Glubb Pasha, in March of 1956, after one round of bloody rioting in December of 1955 and another in March of 1956 against Jordan joining the Baghdad Pact, both instigated by Cairo-based Voice of the Arabs radio station. Hussein believed his throne was in danger. Amman is the capital and largest city in Jordan, sorry. This is located right here. This territory here is the West Bank, right? So it's close-ish. Jesus, hold on. Nice. Oman is in Southeast Arabia. Oman is a country next to Yemen, right? Oh, because I said Oman instead of Aman? Oh, this is kind of this. Okay. British Prime Minister Anthony Eden was especially upset at the sacking of Glubb Pasha, and as one British politician recalled, for Eden, this was the last straw. This reverse, he insisted, was Nasser's doing. Nasser was our enemy number one in the Middle East, and he would not rest until he destroyed all our friends and eliminated the last vestiges of our influence. Nasser must therefore be destroyed. Bottom of the background music? I think your mom ate it. After the sacking of Glubb Pasha, wait, so this guy got sacked because so the king of Egypt was sponsoring demonstrations in Jordan, which caused the king of Jordan to dismiss the British commander of the Arab Legion because he was trying to Arabianize the Jordanian army, basically. Yeah. And the Brits were super mad because they basically knew that Nasser had funded this influence that caused them to lose their last bit of influence over Jordan, basically. Not king, military dictator. The king dismissed the... Wait, who is... Wait. Sir John Bagot Glubb was a military dictator? Or King Hussein of Jordan was a military dictator? Okay. After the sacking of Glubb Pasha, which he saw as a grievous blow to British influence, Eden became consumed with an obsessional... Okay, and Eden is the current British Prime Minister, right? What, in 55, 56? It's a British who served as Prime Minister as a Conservative Party from 55 until 57. Gotcha. Eden became consumed with an obsessional hatred for Nasser, and from March 1956 onwards, was in private committed to the overthrow of Nasser. The American historian Donald Neff wrote that Eden's often hysterical and overwrought views towards Nasser almost certainly reflected the influence of the amphetamines to which Eden had become addicted following a botched operation in 1953, together with the related effects of sustained sleep deprivation. Eden slept on average about 5 hours per night in early 1956. How the fuck would anybody even know this? Is he telling people this? Or... and a botched operation for what? Wait, I'm so curious now. Holy shit. An actual meth guy. Fuck, what happened? Control F, operation. Okay. Eden was also irritated by Churchill's hankering for a summit meeting with the Soviet Union in 1953 after Stalin's death. Eden became seriously ill from a series of botched bile duct operations in 1953 that nearly killed him. After that, he had frequent bouts of poor physical health and psychological depression. Jesus. Amphetamines, drugs. He was also prescribed Benzedrine, the wonder drug of the 1950s, regarded then as a harmless stimulant. It belongs to the family of drugs called amphetamines, and at that time they were prescribed and used in a very casual way. Among the side effects of Benzedrine are insomnia, restlessness, and mood swings, all of which Eden suffered during the Suez Crisis. Indeed, earlier in his premiership, he complained of being kept awake at the night by the sound of motor scooters, being unable to sleep for more than 5 hours per night, or sometimes waking up at 3 a.m. Eden's drug regimen is now commonly agreed to have been part of the reason for his bad judgment while prime minister. The Thorpe biography, however, denied Eden's abuse of Benzedrine, stating that the allegations were untrue, as is made clear by Eden's medical records at Birmingham University, not yet at the time available for research. Benzedrine, which is methylphenethylamine. Methylphenethylamine? Is that how you pronounce that? Oh, contracted from alpha. Hold on, I'm not even reading the right thing. I'm having a fucking autism moment. Oh, what is Benzedrine? Is it just a random, is it just amphetamine? Is it like a thing? Is it like a phenethylamine? Methylphenethylamine? Benzedrine was a brand name for amphetamine sulfate. Oh, okay, gotcha. Base. All right. Okay. Okay, so meth head, nice. Britain was eager to tame Nasser and looked towards the United States for support. However, Eisenhower strongly opposed British-French military action. America's closest Arab ally, Saudi Arabia, was just as fundamentally opposed to the Hashemite-dominated Baghdad Pact as Egypt. And the U.S. was keen to increase its own influence in the region. The failure of the Baghdad Pact aided such a goal by reducing Britain's dominance over the region. Great Britain would have preferred to overthrow Nasser. America, however, uncomfortable with the Czech arms deal, thought it wiser to propitiate him. Propitiate? The fuck is this word? Win or regain the favor of?
Propitiate.
Propitiate. The United States and the Aswan High Dam. On the 16th of May 1956, Nasser officially recognized the People's Republic of China, which angered the U.S. and Secretary Dulles, a sponsor of the Republic of China. This move, coupled with the impression that the project was beyond Egypt's economic capabilities, caused Eisenhower to withdraw all American financial aid for the Aswan Dam project on the 19th of July. The Aswan Dam, or more specifically since the 1980s, Aswan High Dam is one of the world's largest embankment dams, which is built across the Nile in Aswan, Egypt between 1960 and 1970. When it was completed, it was the tallest earthen dam in the world. Is it down here? Oh no, it's down here, I see. Why do we help them with this shit? Psh. Cringe. Okay. The Eisenhower administration believed that if Nasser were able to secure Soviet economic support for the High Dam, that would be beyond the capacity of the Soviet Union to support and in turn would strain Soviet-Egyptian relations. Eisenhower wrote in March of 1956 that if Egypt finds herself thus isolated from the rest of the Arab world and with no ally in sight except Soviet Russia, she would very quickly get sick of the prospect and would join us in the search for a just and decent peace of the region. Dulles told his brother, CIA Director Alan Dulles, oh, so it was a different guy. Crazy. If they, the Soviets, nobody in the US had the problem, the public didn't have an issue with Dulles being the Secretary of State and his brother being the CIA director, that seems kind of... I feel like people be like, oh, wait, what? Yeah, I guess the Kennedys were like a huge political family as well, huh? JFK's brother was Attorney General. Yeah. Okay. If they, the Soviets, do make the offer, we can make a lot of use of it in propaganda within the satellite bloc. You don't get bread because you were being squeezed to build a dam. Finally, the Eisenhower administration had become very annoyed at Nasser's efforts to play the United States off against the Soviet Union and refused to finance the Aswan High Dam. As early as September of 1955, when Nasser announced the purchase of the Soviet military equipment via Czechoslovakia, Dulles had written that competing for Nasser's favor was probably going to be an expensive process, one that Dulles wanted to avoid as much as possible. The 1956 American Peace Initiative, in January of 1956, to end the incipient arms race in the Middle East, set off by the Soviet Union selling Egyptian arms on a scale unlimited by the Tripartite Declaration, and with France doing likewise with Israel, which he saw as opening the Near East to Soviet influence, Eisenhower launched a major effort to make peace between Egypt and Israel. Eisenhower sent out his close friend, Robert B. Anderson, to serve as a secret envoy who would permanently end the Arab-Israeli dispute. During his meetings with Nasser, Anderson offered large quantities of American aid in exchange for a peace treaty with Israel. Nasser demanded the return of Palestinian refugees to Israel, wanted to annex the southern half of Israel, and rejected direct talks with Israel. Given Nasser's territorial and refugee-related demands, the Israeli Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion, suspected that Nasser was not interested in a settlement. Still, he proposed direct negotiations with Egypt in any level. That's kind of worth throwing down there. Palestinian refugees and take the annexation of the southern half of Israel. Southern half of Israel. How long was Ben-Gurion Prime Minister of Israel? In office from 48 to 54. Okay, not too long, I guess. No, I'm sorry, hold on. From 48 to 63. Okay, 15 years? Are these like are they 6-year terms or something, or 6-year and an 8-year term? Is this like two different? Or did he lose 1 year and then he had like 8 more years, I guess? Maybe? Okay, I don't know how long their terms are, I guess, for this shit. Whatever. Okay. Would you consider going through the second thought thread and verifying all of his claims? Oof, Christ. Let's see. You lost here, yeah, okay. For anyone still standing with Israel or trying to inject... Oh, is this just posted? October 27th. Or trying to inject false nuance into the Israeli genocide of Palestinians as threat is for you. These are the things you won't be shown in the Western news. Look at them now. It's not too late to adjust your perspective. Targeting medical personnel. This is just a random collection of stories that are happening right now. I don't know how I'm supposed to engage with this. I don't really care. Okay. The main shooter offed himself. Wait, really? Is he dead? Main shooter. Main shooting rampage found dead. Sources say live updates. RIP. How long have he been dead for? Now the real meme is, what do they find him? And he's been dead for like 7 days. A second round of secret diplomacy by Anderson in February. Who was Robert B. Anderson? Eisenhower's close friend. What the fuck does that mean? Was an American administrator, politician, and businessman. He was just a friend. Can you go and do business on behalf of the US like that? Are you allowed to do that? Was he Secretary of Defense here, or was he just... It was in 56, so he had no office. You can just, like, go do shit? Like, bro, this is my friend. Like, talk to him? Are you allowed to do that? Literally an Eisenhower orbiter. Jared Kushner? Okay. A second round of secret diplomacy by Anderson in February of 1956 was equally unsuccessful. Nasser sometimes suggested during his talks with Anderson that he was interested in peace with Israel if only the Americans would supply him with unlimited quantities of military and economic aid. In case of Israeli acceptance to the Palestinian right of return and to Egypt annexing the southern half of Israel, Egypt would not accept a peace settlement. The United States or the United Nations would have to present the Israeli acceptance to all Arabs as a basis for peace settlements. It's not clear if Nasser was sincerely interested in peace or just merely saying what the Americans wanted to hear in the hopes of obtaining American funding for the Aswan High Dam and American weapons. This Egypt guy seems fucking insane. Well, he was you would call him, if he was white and if his country was in Europe, you would just call him an imperialist, right? It sounds like his aims were he wanted to unite all of the Arab states, with Egypt kind of being the head of that, right? You have like the United States was the head of like the liberal democracy, capitalist first world. You had the Soviet Union at the top of the communist, socialist second world, and he wanted to be the head of the Arab states, the Arab nations, and like the Middle East, the greater Middle East region, I guess, in the Arab world. That was his ambition. The truth will likely never be known, as Nasser was an intensely secretive man who managed to hide his true opinions on most issues from both contemporaries and historians. However, the British historians P.J. Vitikitos noted that Nasser's determination to promote Egypt as the world's foremost anti-Zionist state as a way of reinforcing his claim to Arab leadership meant that peace was unlikely. Hassan Afif el-Hassan says that in 1955 to 1956, the Americans proposed to Nasser that he solve the Arab-Israeli conflict peacefully in exchange for American finance of the High Dam on the Nile River, but Nasser rejected the offer because it would mean siding with the West as opposed to remaining neutral in the Cold War. Since the alternative to a peace agreement was a war with unpredictable consequences, Nasser's refusal to accept the proposal was irrational, according to el-Hassan. The canal nationalization. Nasser's response was the nationalization of the Suez Canal. On the 26th of July, in a speech in Alexandria, which is still in Egypt, yeah, up here, I think it looked like. Second biggest city in Egypt. Nasser gave a riposte to Dulles. During his speech, he deliberately pronounced the name of Ferdinand de Lesseps, the builder of the canal, a code word for Egyptian forces to seize control of the canal and implement its nationalization. He announced that the nationalization law had been published, that all assets of the Suez Canal Company had been frozen, and that stockholders would be paid the price of their shares according to the day's closing price on the Paris Stock Exchange. That same day, Egypt closed the canal to Israeli shipping. Egypt also closed the Straits of Tiran to Israeli shipping and blockaded the Gulf of Aqaba. If you go north of the border, they called it the Gulf of Water. In contravention of the Constantinople Convention of 1888. Many argued that this is also a violation of the 1949 armistice agreements. Let's like, this is kind of like lead up, I guess. And then we can, this is probably the first big meme. On July 26th, when is this? This must be 1956, right? Nasser nationalized and purchased all assets of the Suez Canal Company. Closed the canal to Israeli shipping. Closed the Straits of Tiran to Israeli shipping. And blockaded the Gulf of Aqaba, sorry. Contravention of the Constantinople Convention of 1888, and most likely a violation of the 1949 armistice agreements, which was probably the agreement that Egypt signed with Israel after the initial war, right? It's pronounced Aqaba. So treaty concerning the Suez Canal, Egypt was signed on 20th of October in the United Kingdom, the German Empire, Austria-Hungary, Spain, France. Okay. According to the Egyptian historian, what is his name? Abd al-Azim Ramadan, the events leading up to the nationalization of the Suez Canal Company, as well as other events during Nasser's rule, showed Nasser to be far from a rational, responsible leader. Ramadan notes Nasser's decision to nationalize the Suez Canal without political consultation as an example of his predilection for solitary decision-making. Oh, Abd is short for Abdullah. Oh, okay. The nationalization surprised Britain and its Commonwealth. There had been no discussion of the canal, the Commonwealth Prime Minister's conference in London in late June and early July. Egypt's action, however, threatened British economic and military interests in the region. Prime Minister Eden was under immense domestic pressure from the Conservative MPs who drew direct comparisons between the events of 1956 and those of the Munich Agreement in 1938. Since the US government did not support the British protests, the British government decided in favor of military intervention against Egypt to avoid the complete collapse of British prestige in the region. The Munich Agreement was an agreement between Nazi Germany, the United States, French, and Fascist Italy that helped Germany annex a part of Czechoslovakia. This was part of the appeasement route or whatever, right? I think it's considered, yeah, okay. Since the US government did not support the British protests, the British government decided in favor of military intervention against Egypt to avoid the complete collapse of British prestige in the region. Okay. Eden was hosting a dinner for King Faisal II of Iraq and his prime minister, Nuri S. Said, when he learned the canal had been nationalized. They both unequivocally advised Eden to hit Nasser hard, hit him soon, and hit him by yourself, a stance shared by the vast majority of the British people in subsequent weeks. There was a lot of humbug about Suez. Guy Millard, one of Eden's private secretaries, later recorded. People forget that the policy at the time was extremely popular. Leader of the opposition, Hugh Gaitskell, was also at the dinner. He immediately agreed that military action might be inevitable, but warned Eden would have to keep the Americans closely informed. After a session of the House of Commons expressed anger against the Egyptian action on the 27th of July, Eden justifiably believed that Parliament would support him. Gaitskell spoke for his party when he called the nationalization a high-handed and totally unjustifiable step. When Eden made a ministerial broadcast on the nationalization, Labour declined its right to reply. Mofel member 6 months. What sucks is that there's a lot of division within the Jewish community right now between Ashkenazi and the Mizrahi Jews. Wow, thanks, Mofel, I guess. However, in the days that followed, Gaitskell's support became more cautious. On the 2nd of August, he said of Nasser's behavior, "It is all very familiar. It is exactly the same that we encountered from Mussolini and Hitler in those years before the war." He cautioned Eden, however, that we must not, therefore, allow ourselves to get into a position where we might be denounced in the Security Council as aggressors or where the majority of the assembly was against us. He had earlier warned Eden that Labour might not support Britain acting alone against Egypt. In 2 letters to Eden, sent on the 3rd and 10th of August 1956, Gaitskell condemned Nasser, but again warned that he would not support any action that violated the United Nations Charter. In his letter of the 10th of August, Gaitskell wrote, "Lest there should be any doubt in your mind about my personal attitude, let me say that I could not regard an armed attack on Egypt by ourselves and the French as justified by anything which Nasser has done so far, or as consistent with the Charter of the United Nations. Nor, in my opinion, would such an attack be justified in order to impose a system of international control over the canal, desirable though this is. If, of course, the whole matter would be taken to the United Nations, and if Egypt were to be condemned by them as aggressors, then, of course, the position would be different. And if further action, which amounted to obvious aggression by Egypt, were taken by Nasser, then again, it would be different. So far, what Nasser has done amounts to a threat, a grave threat to us and to others, which certainly cannot be ignored, but it is only a threat, not in my opinion, justifying retaliation by war." 24 Labour MPs issued a statement on the 8th. How many people are in the lower body of the British Parliament? Is it always the same number? Does it change over time? Is it... Nobody knows. Fucking British... Oh, I guess all the Brits are sleeping, huh? It's changed. Look up the election. Okay, never mind. It changes when boundaries change. The maximum strength of the lower house of parliament is 552 members according to the Constitution 1. Currently, the house has 543 seats, which are made up by the election of 500. Oh, okay. Two dozen Labour MPs issued a statement on the 8th of August stating that forcing Nasser to denationalize the canal against Egypt's wishes would violate the UN Charter. Other opposition politicians were less conditional in their support. Former Labour Foreign Minister Herbert Morrison hinted that he would support unilateral action by the government. Joe Grimmond, who became leader of the Liberal Party that November, thought if Nasser went unchallenged, the whole Middle East would go his way. In Britain, the nationalization was perceived as a direct threat to British interests. In a letter to the British ambassador, Sir Yvonne Kirkpatrick, the permanent... Okay, we got this. Direct military intervention, however, ran a risk of angering Washington and damaging Anglo-Arab relations. As a result, the British government concluded a secret military act with France and Israel that's going to regain... Okay. The French response. The French Prime Minister, Guy Mollet, outraged by Nasser's move, determined that Nasser would not get his way. French public opinion very much supported Mollet, and apart from the French Communist Party, all of the criticism of his government came from the right, who very publicly doubted that a socialist like Mollet had the guts to go to war with Nasser. During an interview with publisher Henry Luce, or Lucet, it's Guy, not Guy, Mollet held up a copy of Nasser's book, The Philosophy of the Revolution, and said, "This is Nasser's Mein Kampf. If we are too stupid not to read it, understand it, and draw the obvious conclusions, then so much the worse for us." On the 29th of July, 1956, the French cabinet decided upon military action against Egypt in alliance with Israel. Let's actually note some positions here. Different countries had different positions on what to do. Eden? Was that the guy's name? Something Eden? Was the Prime Minister of Britain. Fuck, what was his first name? Whatever, Eden is fine. Eden, from Great Britain, wanted war, though opposition parties cautioned that doing so without UN approval would not be supported. In July of 1956, the French cabinet decided upon military action against Egypt in alliance with Israel, and Admiral Nomi of the French Naval General Staff was sent to Britain to inform the leaders of that country of France's decision and to invite them to cooperative interest. At the same time, Mollet felt very much offended by what he considered to be the lackadaisical attitude of the Eisenhower administration to the nationalization of the Suez Canal Company. France, Guy Mollet from France and the rest of the nation was eager for military action. Eisenhower from DC did not really care. It doesn't really seem like we did. I don't really know why. I guess we just didn't give a fuck. This was especially the case because earlier in 1956, the Soviet foreign minister Vyacheslav Molotov had offered the French a deal whereby if Moscow ended its support of the FLN in Algeria, Paris would remain in NATO but become semi-neutralist in the Cold War. So I haven't watched this casual historian video yet. The origins of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. No. Destiny, doesn't this go against the blind American support for Israel that people like your cook like to throw? Oh, yeah, something that I've noticed in reading this. I'm sure, like, by the time I finish this, I'll probably do, like, a short write-up on, like, all the different conclusions, I guess, that are things that I have heard repeated a lot, but I guess aren't true. One of those was, yeah, I thought that early Israel had far more support from the United States and Britain than it actually did. Yeah, just because I'd heard it repeated from Nazis and now from leftists so often. I just assumed that, like, from the very beginning, we were, like, shipping them tons of arms and sending them tons of money and shit to basically set them up to fuck with the Arabs, I guess. That was, like, an assumption that I thought we did, but that's, like, completely and totally not true. But, yeah, I didn't really know as much. But, yeah, I don't know. We got also way more reading, so. Where were we? Given the way that Algeria, which the French considered an integral part of France, had become engulfed in a spiral of increasing savage violence that French leaders longed to put an end to, the Mollet administration had felt tempted by Molotov's offer, but in the end, Mollet, a firm Atlanticist, had chosen to remain faithful to NATO. In Mollet's view, his fidelity to NATO had earned him the right to expect firm American support against Egypt, and when the support proved not forthcoming, he became even more determined that if the Americans were not willing to do anything about Nasser, then France would act. One thing that I kind of wonder that's, like, interesting to me, I guess, is I wonder if Jewish people not having a country for so long and being like, I wonder if them being like the perfect size of like a population kind of helped them in the macro sense in terms of like macro, like global foreign affairs. Because like it feels like Arabs have this problem. Even saying Arabs is really broad, where there are like so many different competing factions for power that they never really all want to come together and do something. Whereas like Jewish people were like small enough that they didn't control like a fuck ton of countries, but they were large enough and successful enough in countries that they had like a decent amount of money and enough people that they could like all go together and like chill in one country and just like build their shit up. Like if there would have been like 7 or 8 competing Jewish countries all fighting against each other, like there were for Arabs maybe, yeah. Although I guess I don't know how much early Jewish history is real versus what is like just biblical. Like with the tribes of David, was that real or was that just like I don't actually know. Yes, they think it was real. Is that are the tribes of like David and all that shit? Is that like the tribes weren't real, but Israel versus Judea was real? Okay, yeah, I have no idea. I don't know. Everything before the Two Kingdoms period is memes. Okay. The Commonwealth response. Among the white dominions of the British Commonwealth, Canada had few ties with the Suez Canal and twice had refused British requests for peacetime military aid in the Middle East. Damn. It had little reaction to the seizure before military action. By 1956, the Panama Canal was much more important than Suez to Australia and New Zealand. The following year, two experts would write that it is not vital to the Australian economy. The memory... Wait, hold on, I'm sorry. Here's a question. So, what, it was like the 1400s, 1500s? When did like Christopher Columbus and Magellan and all these losers go to America? 1492. When did people find out that you could go from like Japan to the United States? When did that happen? Why were we never like fighting the Japanese on the other side? Did they not have big enough ships yet? Or was the journey too long? Was it way too, or what? Japan was isolationist? Way too far? We didn't get to that side of America yet? Bro, the ocean is massive? I mean, the Atlantic Ocean is pretty big, no? It's the Pacific... I guess the Pacific Ocean is literally like an entire half of the Earth, I think. Because you're crossing from here to here. As opposed to this would be way more. You can follow like some of the Polynesian islands though, right? Damn, imagine how fucking crazy it would have been if Japan would have somehow found like a way to get to America while we were colonizing it. It would have been like samurais versus cowboys in the middle. Why hasn't Quentin Tarantino made a movie on this? That would have been sick. That's Hawaii? I'm sorry, isn't Hawaii considered part of the Polynesian Isles? Is that not true at all? Am I completely wrong on that? I thought that like everything out here was considered the Polynesian Isles. Hawaiian, any of the Aboriginal people of Hawaii, descendants of Polynesians who migrated to Hawaii in two waves. Why do you fucking retards spam question marks? Hold on. Okay. Do research on how the Polynesians found their islands. It's crazy. Yeah, I thought they just like literally hopped in ships or like boat things and they just like sailed for fucking days and then they either found something or they died. But I think somehow, the Polynesians got to Hawaii, which is unbelievable considering how far it is. So I'm pretty sure they did. Hawaii and any of the Aboriginal people of Hawaii, descendants of the Polynesians migrated to Hawaii in two ways. First of the Marquesas Islands, probably about 8,400. Like, this is insane. They had star charts? Yeah, but they didn't know any land was out there, right? No? From the Society Islands. I don't even know where the fuck these things are. I think they saw birds going over there. They got high on some herbs and hopped into a boat. Based. Okay. Polynesians arguably reached America. Maybe. By 1956, the Panama Canal was much more important than Suez to Australia and New Zealand. The following year, two experts would write that it is not vital to the Australian economy. The memory, however, of the two nations fighting in two world wars to protect a canal, which many still call their lifeline to Britain, or jugular vein, contributed to Australian Prime Minister Robert Menzies and New Zealand Prime Minister Sydney Holland supporting Britain in the early weeks following the seizure. On the 7th of August, Holland hinted to his parliament that New Zealand might send troops to assist Britain and received support from the opposition. Canada didn't care. Australia kind of cared. New Zealand cared. I guess. Right, hold on. It's not that important. On August 13th, Menzies, who had traveled to London from the United States after hearing of the nationalization, became an informal member of the British cabinet discussing the issue, spoke on the BBC in support of the Eden government's position on the canal. He called the dispute over the canal a crisis more grave than any since the Second World War. An elder statesman of the Commonwealth who felt that Nasser's actions threatened trading nations like Australia, he argued publicly that Western powers had built the canal, but that Egypt was now seeking to exclude them from a role in its ownership or management. South Africa's Johannes Strydom stated, "It is best to keep our heads out of the beehive." His government saw Nasser as an enemy, but would benefit economically and geopolitically from a closed canal, and diplomatically from not opposing a nation's right to govern its internal affairs. The non-white dominions saw Egypt's seizing of the canal as an admirable act of anti-imperialism, and Nasser's Arab nationalism is similar to Asian nationalism. Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru is white versus non-white dominions literally by skin color? Is that what that means? Or is it like big colonies versus small colonies? Or Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru was with Nasser when he learned of the Anglo-American withdrawal of aid for the Aswan Dam. As India was a major user of the canal, however, he remained publicly neutral, other than warning that any use of force or threats could be disastrous. Suez was very important to the Dominion of Ceylan's economy. What the fuck is this? Was an independent country in the Commonwealth of Nations from 48 to 72. Christ. And it was renegotiating defense treaties with Britain, so its government was not as vocal in supporting Egypt as it would have likely been otherwise. Pakistan was also cautious about supporting Egypt given their rivalry as leading economic nations, but its government did state that Nasser had the right to nationalize. Bro, I don't believe some of these places are real, okay? Okay. Don't you think it's really stupid lefties are saying America doesn't care about Palestine when that train derailment in East Palestine was in the news cycle for months? A good one. The non-white dominion saw Egypt seizing the canals an admirable act of anti-imperial. Okay. Pakistan didn't want to do shit. Okay. Western diplomacy. Okay, we'll probably end like right here for tonight. On Western diplomacy. Damn, how much longer is this article? Oh, okay. We're over halfway through. Jeez, okay. This Nasser dude was pretty fucking wild. We're in 56 right now.